Supply and demand is when the value increases if the supply decreases, and the demand for it remains constant or increases. And the value decreases when supply increases or the demand decreases. Okay.
Victor, we just highlighted that first sentence under supply and demand.
Yep. Yep.
Okay.
So, that's probably better to put that sentence in here than these crappy definitions that they got. So, supply and demand, we'll just go with the definitions that they have here.
That audio
That they got in the book. What?
going in and out.
Sorry. Is it breaky, choppy?
Yes.
Uh,
A little bit. I hear you. You're not going in and out. It clicks every once in a while.
Yeah, you guys are going in and out.
That might be your connection.
I don't know. I mean, I got a good FiOS 1 gig connection here, so
Yeah, for me, it sounds like the same as this morning. So
yeah, it's probably Zoom. So supply and demand. I'm gonna add this definition here. If the value of the property increases, if the supply decreases and the demand increases or remains constant, and vice versa. Okay. And the opposite is true. Okay, so the value of the property increases if the supply decreases and the demand increases, or remains constant, and vice versa. That basically means and the opposite is true. Okay? That's the theory of supply and demand, right? You're running out of product, but people still want it, the price goes up, right?
Right.
You got a lot of people, you don't have a lot of people that want the product, but you got a lot of the product, price goes down, right? So conformity tends to stabilize the values in neighborhoods better, right? If properties are all conforming to the neighborhood, you don't have multifamilies next to single families next to storefronts. If they keep the same basic architectural styles in the neighborhoods versus everything being a different architectural style, neighborhoods tend to maintain their values better. That's called conforming. So if something's conforming to the neighborhood or not. You never want to have the best house on the block. You get the best house on the block, it's non-conforming to the neighborhood, you'll never get all your money back. I don't care how nice it is. Right? I had this instance one time with a guy who started up his own company as a builder. He worked for a builder for years and years. Instead, he decided he wanted to open his own company and become a builder. So he bought a piece of land on a lake in Old Bridge, a couple blocks away from where the expensive properties were. Problem is, he decided to build an expensive property a couple blocks away from where the expensive properties were. The neighborhood that he was building this house in was surrounded by $300,000 houses or under. Okay. He was building a $750,000 house because he's like, well, yeah, but it's on a lake. Yeah, but you're in the wrong neighborhood. If the lake was down the street next to all those expensive homes, you'd get your money back. I'm like, why? Now he couldn't grasp this because he's just a builder. He's like, well, it's a beautiful home and over here. Why wouldn't somebody pay that much to be here? Guess he doesn't have common sense. Common sense ain't too common. Needless to say, other than other problems that he had with the people in the neighborhood not wanting that house to be built there because they thought it was public land, and they could always cross over it with their ATVs and walk over it to go to the peninsula to go fishing and stuff. You know what? The neighborhood had didn't like the fact that he had that property to begin with. And then when he starts building this mansion there, basically, it's not a mansion, but it was a really nice big house. The kids in the neighborhood were always vandalizing it, breaking in, stealing stuff, breaking every window in the house. Took a sledgehammer to the hot tub jacuzzi. They stole the gas fireplace from the wall. They ripped it out of the wall. They decided they were going to have a little bonfire in the living room, which was stupid. They're lucky they didn't burn down the house. By the time, with all these delays and insurance claims, before the guy was ever able to complete the house, he was never able to sell it. Once we put it on the market, told him it's overpriced for the neighborhood too. People with 750 grand are not going to want to be in a 350 or $300,000 neighborhood, right? So, needless to say, nobody came to see it. He eventually lowered the price down to maybe 650. Nobody was going to come see it. When you build a property and you get a loan to buy a house, these loans for builders, you have to tell the bank when you're expected to be done with the project, how long you need to get it on the market, and have it sold by. If you start missing these deadlines now, the bank starts charging the builder penalties. And this guy was now getting monthly penalties of $1,500 to $2,000 a month to pay back the loan. So he ended up getting foreclosed on. We weren't able to sell it. Okay. Then when the house was eventually foreclosed on by the lender and eventually sold, they sold it for about $400,000, $350 to $400,000 price range. Okay. $750,000 is not the neighborhood for it. Never pays to have the nicest house on the block. You never get your money back. That house was definitely non-conforming to the neighborhood. Right. Now, regression. Values drop when the neighborhood around you fall apart or homes are not being maintained. The neighborhood is regressing, right? And just the same, progress, worth is increased or value is increased when the neighboring properties have higher values or everybody is increasing the values of their properties around them, right? Look, with all ships, all ships rise with rising waters, so to speak, right? And when the waters fall. So that's regression and progression. If the neighborhood's going downhill, the water level's falling, all the ships will fall, right? Including the nice ship, right? The yacht. And the same thing is now when the waters rise, all the ships, even the crappy ones, rise, right? That's the theory of regression and progression, how it works. Now, anticipation. All right, anticipation. Did you guys hear what they're going to be building down the street from us over here? That's anticipation.
Oh.
All right. Anticipation. In anticipation for what may happen. Could that have an effect on values?
Yeah.
Sure can. Let me see. Let me see if I can pull something up really quick. Just give you an example of anticipation. All right, I'm trying to pull it up. In Linden, New Jersey, they proposed a couple years back to build a NASCAR racetrack here.
Oh, Lord.
Now, if you're not familiar with NASCAR, any place in the United States where there's a NASCAR racetrack, that town that it's built in and all the towns surrounding it get a huge economic boom to them. The restaurants, the hotels, they're usually booked in a year in advance before a race occurs. All right. So They proposed to build a NASCAR racetrack where it was in some marshland where they were going to be building it near the turnpike. They were actually going to even make a. They were actually going to talking about building up a turnpike exit directly into Linden, right on Route Wood Avenue. Now, in anticipation of what was going to happen there, I'm trying to find it. I can't find it right here in the media right now. In anticipation of what was going to happen, a lot of people started buying up the properties around where they thought they were going to be building that NASCAR racetrack. And because they knew that the property values were going to go up and somebody would buy it from them at a huge markup. All right. So that previous marshland that nobody would buy, all of a sudden, in anticipation of what could be built there, started getting a huge increase of value. I even got in on it. I found out what they were going to call the racetrack. They were going to call it Liberty Speedway. So guess who the proud owner of LibertySpeedway.com is? I mean, I didn't go buying real estate, but I went and I bought digital real estate, right? I bought the domain name when I found out in a public hearing what they were going to call the racetrack, because the developer never did. But the problem came about is in anticipation, people were buying up that property. So in anticipation of that, the values went up. So anticipation can definitely have an effect on value. Now, the NASCAR racetrack never ended up getting built. They scrapped the project because they could not get NASCAR to sanction one NASCAR race there. And a racetrack without one NASCAR race there cannot be called a NASCAR racetrack. It is simply a racetrack. And therefore, the developer scrapped the idea. Ah, David found it. Let's see. Thank you, David. Let's take a look and see what we got. Do, 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 do. Chugga, 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 chugga. All right. Let's take a look at what we have here. NASCAR in Linden, New Jersey. NASCAR Site I in Linden, New Jersey. There we go.
Back in 2003.
Was it that long ago?
Yeah, that's the date of the article.
Oh, well, it went on. No, that was way after that. But that was way after that. But I guess they were proposing it way in advance. But then the developer actually started going through with the developing project years later, put an offer on the property, and that property was subject to a couple things. What is subject to? A happening in which a contract is dependent on. Remember, I told you the very powerful subject to clause that could be added to a contract? Let me mute that. So there was a very powerful subject to clause that was added to the contract, and when he purchased the property, he's purchasing the property subject to him to be able to get the permits from the city to build it, subject to NASCAR sanctioning it as a NASCAR racetrack to get at least one racetrack there. Okay. Let me see. Oh, that's it. Everything else is ads on this page. Okay, so it just gives you that little blurb here. Yeah, I'll try to find more out about it.
It's crazy because just Victor, can you hear me?
Back in 2003, but it went through after that as well. 2003, 2004, around the time I got my license. You can't hear me?
He turned his volume down.
No, can you hear me?
Because I muted everybody. Sorry about that.
Okay. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
I was going to say it's crazy.
Commercials.
Just because they were thinking about building this NASCAR track, that it called for a 400,000 square foot entertainment center and a 20-story hotel and conference center. Just because they were thinking about it, they were already putting in bids for that. Like that was part of the plan.
Yep, in anticipation.
That's crazy.
Okay, that just shows you how any place in the country where a NASCAR racetrack gets built, I mean, there's NASCAR fans out there. You may not be a NASCAR fan, but there's NASCAR fans that are out there. Not all NASCAR fans are rednecks waving Confederate flags, okay? So get that idea out of your head, okay? People just like racing, you know? They like drag racing, they like circle track racing, just like they like football and basketball and hockey and all those other sports, okay? It's just another sport. You may not be into it, you know? But it does have its following, and that following is huge. So when those fans are dedicated, and believe it, we do have a NASCAR following up here. That they would get that attention. They would need the hotels for the stays before a NASCAR race, all the restaurants for the extra volume of people. You think the stores, those people wouldn't be shopping at the stores in the local area? You know, it would be a huge economic boom to the area. All right.
That was going to be on Wood Avenue?
No, they were gonna build a turnpike exit
Oh,
directly onto Wood Avenue. If you go down Wood Avenue to the South Wood Avenue all the way to the end, you could actually see the turnpike a mile away. Okay, there's nothing there. All it is marshland, you know, and that marshland is, I'm assuming that's where they were going to be building it. I'm not sure exactly where they were going to be building it in Linden, but I know it was marshland. There's a huge bit of marshland right there, so it must have been just off the turnpike. That would make a lot of sense to have that there. All right, so that's anticipation for you.
Can you just quickly repeat subject to is happening what?
Subject to, the term subject to is
Happening.
happening which the contract is dependent upon.
Okay.
Okay, so the contract is subject to, excuse me, you being able to sell your home before you could complete the purchase on this one, you know, subject to you being able to get financing, subject to a home inspection, not finding any major problems with the house, subject to the family members who are putting up the money for me to buy the home give their approval. Subject to is just basically a happening on which the contract is dependent. Okay? Chapter 11. That was chapter 11. Okay. Are we at what is an appraisal yet? I keep moving that slide. No. So conformity. All right, nothing to highlight there. Regression, progression, I just explained it. Anticipation, the same thing. These are just theories. Regression and progression. Is a neighborhood regressing or progressing? You know, you could get some neighborhoods where you got this old timer that's there. His house is crumbling and falling apart. He's sitting on the front porch in a rocking chair, not selling. Everybody's buying up the properties around him, turning them into McMansions, you know. And, you know, he gets approached daily by realtors and developers and people wanting to buy his property and willing to pay way more than it's worth. And they're like, you know, your home could be worth. And he's like, yep, put the car to the porch. Yeah.
He's waiting for oil on the property.
Look at North Edison and in Edison that happened. There's an area there where they started building up these million and a half properties. You'd see peppered around there was some older ranch style houses from old time farmers that are left over, those old ranch houses. And they're just sitting there on their front porch watching the whole community build up around them. And the value of their land is going up, and they're not doing a damn thing to their property. All right. That is progression. So their property is benefiting from progression. Not that they did anything from their house, but all rising waters raise all ships, right? So with the community increasing in value, so is their property. It's becoming very valuable and in demand, right? So competition, increasing returns, contribution. Increasing and diminishing returns is, I told you about this several times. You know, your kitchen's in bad shape. It needs a repair. You'll get all your money back up to a certain point. You start going overboard with your improvements. Your return starts diminishing. You'll never get all the money back. Contribution. I could give you $20,000 and I could give someone else $20,000 to do improvements on a house, and they both can vary greatly if on how much it would actually increase the value, if at all, for the property. You know, maybe you're into 70s style and shag carpet, and you spend a lot of money on that. How are you using that contribution? You know, how is it being used? Can affect the value. Competition. This is more important with commercial real estate, really. But really, competition. Profits attract competition, but excess profits attract ruinous competition, right? Change. Nothing remains constant. Things change, okay? Everything from the local market conditions, jobs, politics, improvements, contamination, industry, weather patterns, flood zones get redrawn and remapped. All of these things contribute to change. Look, job conditions. Let's say the local job market condition. The major industry where most of the people in town had their jobs shuts down and move out. They relocate to Mexico. What is that going to do for your local economy? What is that going to do for the property values now that all the major industry went out? That was also supporting most of the tax dollars, okay? Well, your tax dollars may be going up to support it now. However, there's no jobs there anymore. All right, the major industry moved out. We got ghost towns in the United States where major industry moved out. No. Anyway. So, are we at what is an appraisal yet? Not yet. We're at the 3 approaches to value. How can we be at the 3 approaches to value? We didn't get to appraisal yet.
It's not on page 275?
Was it?
Yeah, where it says on market value.
Appraisal it was market value. Look at that. We keep moving it. We kind of skipped over it. Not substitution.
The appraisal process is on 285 though, so I think it goes into depth a little bit more further in the chapter.
Yeah, 284 and 285 starts appraising and the appraisal process.
Now, where it says market value, they talk about an appraisal as an estimate or opinion of value. They're just the basics of that. That would be on that page 275. So 275, market value. What was before it? Value, supply and demand, all that good stuff. Let me see. Substitution, supply and demand. Oh. Market value, market price, costs, highest and best use, substitution. Oh, that's the next page. Okay, so should be, what is appraisal? Should be around here. Market value. No, it should be before that. Okay, defect value. Yeah, it's just before market value. So just before this one. Look at that. Yep. Value for economic characteristics. And then what is appraisal? Okay, it's in its right spot now. All right, so mark your page and let's go back to page 275 for a second. What is an appraisal? It's an unbiased estimate or opinion of value based on supportable evidence using approved methods. We already just went over all the approved methods because we went out of this in the backward order here. And an appraiser is a profession that requires licensing. Appraiser is a licensed independent person, doesn't work for the lender or the buyer, although the buyer has to pay the appraiser. There's a fee paid by the borrower. Lender selects them, and they're trained to provide an unbiased estimate of value. So, appraising is a profession that requires licensing. So, highlight an appraisal is an estimate or opinion of value based on supportable evidence and approved methods. All right. Now, an appraiser is an independent person trained to provide an unbiased estimate of value. We can highlight that as well. All right. So now that's everything that's on that slideshow. All right. So go back to page. Back to what page? To page 270, 277. Last thing we just talked about was anticipation. Contribution, competition, change. Okay, we spoke of all of these things just now. These are all the theories that an appraiser has to take into consideration. Now we're going to go over the 3 approaches to value. Before we do this, now we're going to start getting into this stuff. This is pretty important stuff here. Let's first highlight the title, 3 approaches to value. And then highlight on the second line, the sales comparison approach, the cost approach, and the income approach. These are the 3 approaches to value that we're going to learn about. Turn to page 278. We'll start off with the sales comparison approach. Now, this approach is most often used by licensees, okay? So here's the 3 approaches to value. You got sales comparison approach, it's CMA, or comparative approach, or sometimes referred to as the comparative price analysis, whatever. And then we have the cost approach and the income approach. So the first one is the sales comparison approach, CMA, most often used by real estate licensees. Take that CMA workshop to learn about it, or rely on your broker to train you. It's best for residential property valuations. It compares subject property to similar ones, which we call comps, or comparative properties that are similar in size, style, location, and amenity to the subject property. What is an amenity? It's an extra that goes with the property. Clean air, views, etc. So they're similar in size, style, location, and amenity to the subject property that has recently sold. Then you would make adjustments in the sales price of the comps for any differences. So you're going to adjust for date of sale, okay? So when we say recently sold properties, we're talking about something that sold within the last 3 months. If you start looking 6 months or 1 year or more, okay, once you start getting to the point of a year or more, that longer ago that the property sold, it depends on the speed of the market, how it's changing in the current environment that you're in. When you start getting around that year or more that you're pulling comps, the market could have changed a lot from then. And if it did change a lot from that point, then you're going to have to start also making adjustments, not just for the differences in the properties, but also you're going to have to make adjustments for percentage of market change. Okay, then the math starts getting a little more complicated. The location has to be relatively the same, but definitely in the same municipality. If you got a property that's right on the border of 2 towns, you got to pull comps from the same town, not the next door neighboring town. They could have a different tax base. They have different tax rates, different school systems, police, fire, local systems for trash pickup, all that. These are all different factors. You're talking about a different town, might as well be a different planet. okay? You got to use comps from the same town. Physical features should be similar, same architectural style, square footage, number of bedrooms and baths, you know, garage, etc. But you would make adjustments for the differences if it's not exactly the same. Because some of the comps that you pull up may not be exactly the same. They could have slight differences. You could have one house that's a 4-bedroom, one that's 3-bedroom, but yet they're the same style home, you know? So you have to make adjustments for the differences in them. Maybe one has central air, the other one has window units, you know? You got to make adjustments for the differences. One could be in better condition than the other, but they're exactly the same otherwise, you know? You have to make adjustments for the differences. Now, how do you put a price to the differences? That's why, well, through education and experience, okay? So you guys don't have the experience yet, but you could take one of these CMA workshops or get training from your brokers to teach you how to do that, okay? I'm telling you, your brokers probably will not be able to do a good job training you on how to do that. So you're better off taking one of these CMA workshops like I was telling you about. So, you got to look into the terms and conditions of the property of the sale as well. Those things could play a role. You know, did the seller pay for the closing costs and the down payment? If they contributed to that, is that going to affect the values of the property? I mean, was that purchase price all to the purchase price, or did some of that money go back to the buyer? If they did, then it wasn't really reflecting the true value of the home, how much money that the seller actually got for it. So if the subject property is missing a feature or is in poor condition, so we need to know when to make adjustments for the differences, okay? So terms and conditions of the property of the sale, and know when to make adjustments for the differences. Okay, so if the subject property is missing a feature that the comparable property, if the subject property is missing a feature or is in poorer condition than a comparable property, you're going to add to the value of the comparable property. That's CBS, comp, better, subtract. If the property has a feature or is in better condition than the comparable property, then the value of the comparable property, CPA, comparable, poorer, add. That's, I don't even know what they're babbling about there, okay? That's what the book talks about. They're trying to teach you how to know when do you add or subtract from a comparable property's value. You have to have, when pricing a property, you got to have at least 3 comps. If we look on page 279, there's a chart here of a basic CMA. The subject property is the property we're trying to determine the value for, the one that we're listing. The comparable properties, A, B, and C, these properties have all recently sold in the neighborhood. So what we need to know for exams, right now you guys don't need to know how much does an extra bath cost or anything like that. Right now what you just need to know at the beginning stage is just when do you add or subtract from a comparable's value when trying to determine value, okay? So in this chart, here, let's go to a chart that I made in the book instead. Let's move that around. All right, this chart that I made right here in the book, it's similar to the one that you got here in the book, okay? So learning to properly evaluate property or value property, evaluate, to properly value property is a skill, and your broker may train you, but how well, here, go to that CMA workshop at Ottawa. Anyway, so the subject property is the one you're trying to sell. This subject property has 4 bedrooms, 2.5 baths, 1-car garage. And just for those differences, we're not going to go into any other differences, just those. So let's keep this CMA chart simple. Forget about the one in the book, okay? Let's look at the one here on the screen. Now we have a comparable property 1, 2, and 3. Comparable property 1. These are all Cape Cod style homes. Okay, Cape Cod, Cape Cod, Cape Cods, Cape Cod, Cape Cod, Cape Cod. So these are all Cape Cod style homes. All right, so that's good. We're at least comparing apples to apples here, so to speak. So, but comparable property 1 only had 3 bedrooms, and the subject property had 4. What are we trying to do? We know that this property sold for $300,000. So if the only difference in these 2 homes was the number of bedrooms, we would need to determine how much a 1-bedroom costs and then add that into this sale price here. And that's how much this property would be worth, right?
Mm-hmm.
So what do? Are we going to add to the value of the comparable when it's missing a feature that the subject property has? Yes. We're going to pretend that if this property, because what the goal here is we're going to try to make all these properties exactly the same as this one. And we're going to make adjustments for the differences. So if we determine that a 1-bedroom was valued at $5,000, we would just add $5,000 to the sale price. This sale price would be $305,000, right? So if that's the only comp that we look at right now, we know the subject property should sell for $305,000 if the only difference was the bedroom, right? So we're going to have to make adjustments for all the things that are different though, and then make the total adjustments here. And then we make that total adjustment to the actual sales price. And this will give us the price range on how we should price the homes. So what I want you to learn here is not how do we value the differences. Right now, I'm just trying to teach you when to know when to add to a comparable property's value, when to add to a comparable property's value, and when to subtract from a comparable property's value. We're trying to bring these properties up to the same level. The subject property is the one that is up for sale, the one we're trying to price, right?
Yeah.
And the comparable property is the one that's already sold in the neighborhood that's similar. It's comparable. So if a comparable property is missing a feature that the subject property has, okay, whatever the value of that feature is, are we adding to or subtracting to its value to bring it up or down to the same level as the subject property?
You're adding.
We're adding to bring it up to the same level. And if a comparable property has a feature that the subject property is missing, do we add or subtract from its value to bring it to the same level as the subject property? Subtract. You see that this visual makes it a lot easier. You guys can do this with your hands too. So if you're taking an exam and they give you a question like this, if the comparable property, the subject property has 3 bedrooms, but a comparable property has 4, are we going to add or subtract from the comparable property's value? Subtract to bring it down to the same level, to make it the same. Right?
Wait, you're gonna sorry.
Yeah, here, let's do it with this picture. So if a comparable property has 4 bedrooms, but the subject property just has 3, whatever value that, whatever the value of a bedroom, extra bedroom is, are we going to make it the same as the subject property? Subject property has 3, this one has 4. We would need to determine the value of one of the bedrooms and subtract that from its total sales price to bring it down to the same level. We're trying to make it the comparable property exactly the same as the subject property.
But I don't. Why would is that a sale? You said that's a sales approach.
This is using the comparative sales approach, correct? So what we're doing is we got 3 properties here in this chart in front of you on the screen. Comp 1, Comp 2, Comp 3. I'm trying to just show you one comparable property at a time though. So if there was only one difference in the property, the only thing that was different was the number of bedrooms. Subject property has 4 bedrooms. Comparable property has 3. So comparable property has 1 less bedroom than the subject property does, right?
Right.
Yeah.
So are we going to add to or subtract from the comparable property's value to make it the same as the subject?
Add.
Add. And if the comparable property had 5 bedrooms, would we add or subtract to the comparable property's value
Track.
Subtract.
to bring it to the same level? Is that pretty easy if you don't overthink it?
Right, yeah.
All right. You do that for all the differences in the property. If it was, forget about the bedrooms. What if it was condition? The comparable property was in better condition than the subject property.
Victor, can we go over comp 3? I'm looking at
Well,
the
yeah,
garage.
one at a time, one at a time.
Oh,
We're
okay,
gonna
okay,
go
okay.
through. I just want you to understand the concept of when do you add or when do you subtract from a comparable's value. Just want you to understand that first, okay?
What are you saying about condition?
Let's say that the comparable property was in better condition than the subject property.
Right.
We're going to have to determine a value for the condition, but once we do, are we going to add to or subtract from the comparable property's condition?
You would not, you would subtract.
We would subtract to bring it down to the same level. If the comparable properties it was in worse shape than the subject property, do we add or subtract from its value to bring it to the same level?
Add.
We add. See, doesn't this visual make it a lot easier?
Yes.
Now, you're not going to have these when you're taking the exam. Use these. Do it like this. Okay, here. Do it like this. Subject property, comparable property. Subject property has 4 bedrooms. Comparable property has 3. Do we add to or subtract from the comparable property's value?
Add.
Add to bring it up to the same level. If the comparable property has 5 bedrooms, subject property has 4,
Subtract.
subtract. That's all you need to know. That's all you need to know. Makes it easy. Okay? So now we did that for one thing. Let's say that we over here in this chart, we determined that this one has 1 less bedroom. So we're going to add. So the subject property, the comparable property has 1 less bedroom than the subject property. We determined that the value of a bedroom is $5,000. We're going to add $5,000 to its sales price, which we know is already $300,000. Now, this property, the subject property has 2.5 baths. This comparable only has 2 baths. We determined that a half bath is equal to $2,500.
Mm.
So if this comparable property is missing a half bathroom that's valued at $2,500, are we going to add to or subtract from its value to bring it to the same level?
Add.
Add. And that's what we're doing. We're adding. All right. And then each space. What the hell is that? Each space. Oh, that's probably for the garage. Yeah, each space garage equals $10,000. Okay, so this subject property has 1-car garage. Comparable property's got a 1-car garage.
Remains the same.
It would remain the same. You would not make an adjustment here. So in this case, let's just say it had 0. This way I don't got to go changing this.
Good.
This one didn't have a garage. So we estimate the difference is $10,000. So we're adding $10,000 to the price. Okay. Now these numbers don't have to make sense right now. They're probably not going to make sense on the exam either. But, well, a garage is worth more than that. Don't overthink it. Right now, I just want you to know when to add and when to subtract from a comparable's value. That's all I want you to learn. Okay.
They both have same garage space. You
You do nothing like this one.
you just
Comparable
add
property,
10,000.
it has 4 bedrooms. So does the subject property. The subject property is 2.5 baths.
You just said that you add 10,000 for garage space.
What?
You said that you would add 10,000 for the garage space, but they both have the same amount of garage space.
Yeah. So we didn't know. So we didn't do anything here.
Okay.
You see this? This is the column for comparable property 2.
Oh, property 2.
Okay. So comparable property 2, the only difference in the property is the number of baths. This one has 2 baths. The subject property has 2.5. So what's the half bath valued at? $2,500. So the comparable property is missing the half bath that the subject property has. We would add to its value to bring it up to the same level, whatever the value of the half bath is, right?
Right.
So we know that this property sold for $315,000. We're going to add the $2,500 to it. That means it would have sold for $317,500. Right?
Right.
Now, comparable 3 property has 4 bedrooms, so does the subject. It has 2.5 baths, so does the subject. It has 2 garage spaces, but the subject only has 1.
Mm.
So, if the comparable property has something, a feature that the subject property is not, how much is an extra garage space worth?
10,000.
So this is why we're subtracting from its value to bring it down to the same level. If it only had a 1-car garage, it would have sold for 10,000 less. That's why we subtracted. We're making adjustments for the differences here. We know what
So
the
what
sale
would the
price
extra
was.
for-
What?
I'm sorry, I was going to ask what that 4,000 was.
Number of garage spaces, 1. Each garage space, number of garage spaces, 1. I have no idea what the hell that was. Delete that from there. Okay. I think I had 2 things that were laying over each other anyway.
Okay, so the total adjustments for comp 3 would be 10,000 minus 10,000 at 6,000 then, right?
Correct.
Okay. All right, I get it then.
And then this property would have sold for 310. Right? So what is the price range for this home for the subject property to be listed at that we would suggest to the property owner?
300 to 310, 310 to 317.
That's the price range. Because these adjusted prices show that if these homes with the slight differences were exactly the same as the subject property, this is how much they would have sold for.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Victor, is this similar to, not similar, but is this an example of what the house is worth or valued at based on the comps in comparison to your homeowner that wanted to raise the price based on them getting a quick offer?
Yeah,
So-
but how did they come up with that price that they determined they wanted more of a price based on their feelings, based on their emotions? That offer came too quick, so we must have priced it too low. But we're like, no, based on the comparable properties, nothing's sold in that price range. You're in the right price range right now. Now you want to raise it over 317. This is why they didn't get any offers.
If a homeowner feels that their property is worth more based on any remodeling that they've done, can they go above the CMA?
Whose house is it?
Theirs.
They could say, I want $1 million for my home.
Okay.
You know what's going to happen?
Not if it's not in the comps.
It
Not
ain't,
if the comps
it ain't going to
don't-
sell because nobody in their right mind would give you $1 million for that home.
And a lot of times homeowners feel an emotional attachment to their home. Well, my home has to be worth more than that.
Yeah.
Right.
And
That's
I
true.
understand you love your home. You maintained your home very well. Your home is in very nice condition. And I understand you did it yourself. So you got that special, that pride of improvement that you did and how the family did the improvement together. And, so you got that extra emotional attachment to it. But that's why you hire me as the real estate agent. I don't have any
No, but
emotional
there's-
attachment to your home. For me,
There's
it's
an expectation also because
a business transaction. I'm going to come in here like any potential buyer would. They don't care about your emotional attachment to the home. So I'm
no, but the seller has an expectation. If you paid the contractor all that money, you want to try to
wait.
recoup it.
So are you talking about cost?
If you did improvement, right, and it cost a heck of a lot of money, you have an expectation that the value would be increased because of the work you did and the amount you spent to do that.
Well, people have expectations that the cost is going to equal the actual value, and it doesn't.
People have people have unrational expectations, unreasonable expectations, then.
I'm not
If
saying
that's-
that it's effective. I'm just saying that that factor is always there though. They're gonna say my house is worth $1 million because I put in so much work.
And that's when it feels like you're banging your head against a brick wall.
Yeah, because it has nothing to do with the comps in the area necessarily.
Did I tell you that that's ever not going to happen?
Well,
That
that'll
will
happen,
happen.
definitely.
That's what I'm
That's
saying.
definitely going to happen.
Yep.
That's why
You know
see
why?
it on the
You know why?
market for 6
You know
months.
why? Because this is the way that the realtor looks at your house. This is the way the appraiser looks at your house. And this is the way the homeowner looks at their house.
Right.
They think they got that freaking castle over there, right? Their home is their castle, right? And the realtor's like, oh, you got a very nice house, but it's not quite that. It's a little bit more modest. And the appraiser's more realistic. They're like, what? You're crazy. This is what it's worth right here. And which is the only one that matters. This
Yeah,
one right here.
Right.
Because unless you get a buyer that's an idiot that got a lot of cash, nobody's going to pay this for it.
So you're saying,
Can't hear you.
you're saying the sales comparison
You're
approach.
frozen.
Hold on one at a time.
Oh. You were frozen.
So you're saying the sales comparison approach falls where with the realtor, because
Yeah.
it's the appraisal.
Well, both the realtor and the appraiser are using the sales comparison approach for this residential property.
Okay.
All right, because that's one of the 3 approaches to value that we could use, but this is the one that's used for residential properties is the sales comparison approach to value. All right.
It doesn't matter how much you really think you're doing to your home. It's gonna be based off of
Hi, vey.
what the prices are in your general area.
Correct. Correct. We got to base it off of reality. Say, listen,
Okay.
sometimes I ask the homeowner, I'm like, well, I based this pricing
Oh,
on your
God.
home based on the comparable sold homes that are similar in size, style, location, and amenity that have recently sold. And we made adjustments for the differences, the variations in condition and features of the property to come up. So we could point out the actual numbers of what your home's worth is. This is the same thing that an appraiser does. Except
Victor, are you aware that you're freezing periodically?
no.
Yeah, you are.
So we can't call this an appraisal because we're not appraisers. All right. We call it a CMA when we do this, but this is the
Right.
same exact thing that an appraiser does when they do an appraisal for a residential property using the sales comparison approach. Appraisers use the sales comparison approach as well.
Yes, true.
Okay. It's just with theirs, they have a little more experience in pricing an extra garage or a half bath or a bedroom. So they're a little more accurate with their adjustments than we are. And to be quite frank, most real estate agents are not making the adjustments for the differences. You know what they're doing? They're pulling up these comps and saying, hey, your price range is within 300 and 320. Wait a minute. So isn't that not as really accurate? Because if you actually did make the adjustments, it's actually between 310 and 317.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So 310 is too low and 320 is too high. You could actually fine tune it to get the price in an exact range. Right?
Victor, I'm sorry. Is this the same process as a BPO? Is this the same process the broker would use when giving their homeowner an estimate?
A BPO goes over this stuff, but it also goes over percentage of market change and stuff like that, which CMAs may not. But the
Okay.
appraiser does add that into their appraisal. That's why I said a BPO is like a step above a CMA, closer to what an appraiser does. But
And we never give the homeowner that.
but we still can't call it an appraisal. No, we don't do that because we don't need to, first of all. Now, even with
Okay.
this, the CMA, the percentage of market change and all that, I mean, how are you analyzing the percentage of market change? You would have to look at all the properties that have sold over a period of time and then dictate over this period to this period, and then do some math to figure out what the percentage of change is. All
Got
right.
it. And this CMA, we're allowed to give it to the appraiser, correct?
Sure you can. Sure you can.
Okay.
They may look at some of these comps, take them into
Okay.
consideration, but ultimately they still have to do the research themselves
Got it.
because that's their job. All right. So when we're in this situation, sometimes it's like banging your head against a freaking wall. Our job is salespeople, not appraisers. Our job is, but we have to know what an appraiser does because we do something that's similar, a CMA. And then we have to try to talk the owner down to reality, or as close to reality as we could get, right? Because we know that once it gets to the appraiser, it's going to go down even further, probably. Okay. Cost approach to value. The cost approach to value now. Is also known as the appraisal by summation. That's what AKA means. It means also known as. AKA means also known as I'm freezing frequently. Is anybody else getting me freezing frequently, or is?
No.
No.
All right, Marlene. I think that's your internet connection then. All right. It could be your internet connection, or it could be that you just need to reboot your computer if I'm freezing a lot on you. Okay.
Okay.
So this is used to determine the value of special purpose or unique one of a kind or public properties that may not have comparables or generate income in the normal fashion, like schools, churches, libraries, or city hall. How would you price any of those? They don't have comps. There's probably not a lot of schools, churches, libraries, or city halls that have sold in the area recently that you could compare it to. None of these generate income in a normal fashion like a normal business would, so you couldn't use the income approach. So for these types of special purpose or custom buildings, unique one-of-a-kind buildings, you would use the cost approach to determine the value of a school, church, library, city hall, or other custom, unique, one-of-a-kind building or property. So this approach is often used by appraisers, not by salespersons, due to the knowledge required in order to do it. But on exams, we still have questions about it. So we got to know it for the exam. So the cost approach is also known as an appraisal by summation. Summation, what does that mean? Summation, that means math. It means we're going to do some adding and subtracting, right? So how does this process work? Well, the process of valuation using the cost approach, appraisal by summation, the appraiser would first estimate the value of the land as if it were vacant and put to its highest and best use. What is the highest and best use? We went over it already this chapter. It's the most profitable use, or the use that will be most in demand in the reasonable near future. Then they estimate the current cost of construction. How much would it cost to put in all the site improvements for that raw land? Putting in all the water pipes, gas pipes, sewer pipes, constructing the building. Now, when constructing the building, here's another factor that the appraiser has to take into consideration. Are they going to use replacement cost or reproduction cost? There's two methods that they could use to determine the cost to construct. See, that's beyond our scope already. We're already beyond our scope, right, of our knowledge. So if you go to page 280, and underneath the number 5 there, 2 paragraphs down, you see where it says reproduction cost. We're going to highlight reproduction cost is the cost. Reproduction cost is the dollar amount required to construct an exact duplicate of the subject building at current prices. Or an exact duplicate. You could probably just stop there of the subject building. Okay. And replacement costs, we'll highlight, of the subject property would be the construction cost of a current prices of a building that is not necessarily an exact duplicate, but serves the same purpose or function as the original. Here, I'm going to explain this in a couple different ways. Okay. So if you have a kitchen and you have all high-end stuff, custom things, custom cabinetry, custom countertops, fancy sinks and appliances and all that, and you had a fire in your kitchen got burnt up, everything's destroyed. When the insurance company comes in, don't they got to get an appraiser to come in? First of all, appraisers also do this for insurance companies too, not just for banks when they're selling property, okay? To determine how much money that they're going to give you to reconstruct. Now, are they going to just replace what was there with something else that's a functional kitchen? They're going to replace cabinets, give you a sink, give you a refrigerator and freezer, just replace it with other items that serve the function. You got new countertops, but they're not necessarily exactly the same. You're not going to have those custom cabinetry or the fancy countertops or sink or appliances. Okay, they refer to that as replacement costs. It's replacing it with something that's not necessarily an exact duplicate. If you want an exact duplicate, you would reproduce. Reproduction is an exact duplicate, right? So you guys need to know the difference between replacement and reproduction. There's another way that I could teach you this using a little bit of humor. Don't get offended. Ladies, why do you have children? To make little mini-me's, little exact duplicates of yourselves, right? No, I know. Some of you don't. Okay, I know. Some of you don't. But listen, here's a way to try to remember this. You want a mini-me, an exact copy of yourself? You reproduce, right? Now, you could still serve the same purpose, have a child that's not necessarily an exact duplicate of yourself by adopting, right? Still serves the same purpose. You have a child, right? But it's not necessarily an exact duplicate of yourself, okay? Either way, you still have a child. So there's a way to remember it. How do you want an exact duplicate? You reproduce. You want something else that serves the same purpose, but it's not exactly the same, okay? So there's a way that works for some people. Some people actually remember stupid things like that, these stupid little stories that I tell. It's not meant to offend anybody that's adopted here or anything like that, okay? It's supposed to be just alternative ways to remember stuff. So replacement is just replacing it with something else that's functional, serves the same purpose. Reproduction is an exact duplicate. Okay. So they would estimate the value of the land, put it to its highest and best use. Estimate the current cost to construct the building. Now the appraiser would have to determine which approach that they would use, the replacement or reproduction cost. And then they would estimate the accrued depreciation for various reasons of the improvement. Now, of the improvement. Okay. Now, there are various reasons that properties can depreciate, but as a general rule, land does not depreciate. So they would deduct the accrued depreciation from the improvement from the estimated cost of the new building, not the land, because land does not usually depreciate. There could be circumstances where it does, but it does not usually depreciate. And then you add the value of the estimated land back to the depreciated improvement costs of the building's value. So these are the 5 steps that the appraiser does using the cost approach, also known as the appraisal by summation. They're doing some adding and subtracting here in order to figure that out. Okay. And what types of properties is the cost approach used for?
Non-residential buildings that you can't really find comps for, like schools, government buildings, things like that.
Don't say non-residential.
Could be residential?
It could be residential if they're unique properties, custom, unique properties. It could apply to residential. Typically not, though. Not unless there's something really one of a kind or unique about it that would not have comps. You know, somebody, makes a tree house in your neighborhood. They build a house in the tree or something, I mean, that's unique. That's one of a kind. That's not exactly something that most people have, or they build an underground bunker home. All right. Not exactly what everybody's got. So that's a unique one of a kind property. You would have to price that one in a unique one of a kind way. Right.
Right.
But it's typically what did you say?
Unique one of a kind type of property.
No, but it's typically, no?
What do you mean typically? Typically.
You said, see, I'm writing as you speak, so.
Oh, well, you could just look at the
It's
slides.
unique to residential, but typically to something.
In the
Commercial.
book,
Typically used for commercial properties,
Commercial, okay.
but it's basically for, here we have it here. It's for special purpose, unique, one of a kind, or public properties that may not have comparables or generate income in a normal fashion, like
Okay.
schools, churches, libraries, city hall, or a custom home, a custom unique home.
Okay.
Okay, so it could be for residential, just not as common for that. Not unless there's something very unique about it, right? Anyway. Then we have, let's see, so the cost approach is based on substitution. And then, so this next slide is talking about the difference between that reproduction. Reproduction cost is an exact duplicate of the same building at today's costs. Replacement cost, construction cost of a new building that serves the same purpose or function of the original, but isn't necessarily an exact duplicate. All right. Depreciation. So using that cost approach, here's some more of that theory. Depreciation. What is depreciation? Because part of the cost approach is they have to depreciate the value of the improvement, right? So depreciation is a loss of value due to any cause or condition to an improvement, not to the land, but to the improvement. And as a general rule, land does not depreciate. So here are some curable or incurable problems, or I don't want to say problems, curable or incurable forms of depreciation. Okay. We have physical depreciation. The building rots. The wood is falling apart just because of age, right? Can that be fixed?
Yes.
Sure, you replace the wood, right? So it can be cured with repairs. Then we have something that's known as functional obsolescence. By the way, these next two, you need to have in your definition list here. Functional obsolescence. Let's just, don't look at the definition, just look at the words. If something is functional, what does that mean?
Useful.
It's working. It means that it's working. If it's functional, it means it's working. Now, if something is obsolete, what does that mean? It
No
means
longer.
it means it's old or outdated.
Hmm.
All right. So now let's put those words and the definitions together. I'm trying to show you how you could figure out what these words mean, what these terms mean, if you don't remember the definition, just by looking at the words themselves. So analyzing the word functional means that it works, it's functioning. So there's nothing wrong with it, but it's obsolete. So it's maybe outdated by today's standards. There may not be anything wrong with it. Now, I give an example like this. A 5-bedroom, 1-bathroom house is considered functionally obsolete. These days, most people, they get a 2-bedroom condo, they want 2.5 baths, right? So a 5-bedroom, 1-bathroom house. You know, we get people in this class, they're like, oh, hell no, can't do that. 1 bathroom, All right. Why? What's wrong with it? It's got indoor plumbing. Be happy. Right? Well, by today's standards, you know, at one time, yeah, people would be happy, just glad that they have indoor plumbing. But these days, people want to have multiple bathrooms. So that home is considered functionally obsolete. Now, is there anything wrong with that bathroom? No. That bathroom could be a large bathroom. It could be custom. It could be gorgeous. Everything is, it's got Italian tile. It's got, you know, marble, whatever, you know, it's all custom. It's beautiful. It's got the frameless shower stall doors, you know, it could be beautiful, custom, modern bathroom, but it's considered obsolete because it's only 1 bathroom, right? So, is this curable? Yes, it is. You could add another bath, right?
Yeah.
Now, external obsolescence. External, what does the external mean on that?
Outside.
Outside, right? Now, when they say outside, external, what they're referring to is something that's outside the subject property, not outside the house, but outside the property. So something outside the property that makes it obsolete, obsolescence. Okay. This also is known as economic or locational obsolescence. Because look, the local economy, if the big major industry in the neighborhood, you know, shuts down, all the jobs went away, could that have an effect on the value of the property?
Yeah, like in Pittsburgh, used to be Steel Town, right?
Yep. Yeah. So the local economy can be have an effect on the value of a property. That's external obsolescence. It's something that's not on the subject property. It's external to the property that does have an effect on its value. Can that be cured by you?
No.
No. So some things just can't be cured. So external obsolescence cannot be cured. These are factors not on the subject property or on a neighboring property. It's not on your property. So these things are usually out of your control, but they do affect your property's value. So locational obsolescence is also referred to as locational obsolescence because of where it's located. What if the city dump is down the street from your house? Nothing you could do about that. Could that affect the value of your property? Sure.
Definitely.
All right. Well, look, take a look a couple of years back, Route 1 and 9 in Rahway. They relocated the highway. Route 1 and 9, they moved the highway. They moved the highway about 30 feet. They moved it about 30 feet over. There's a lot of properties over there, car dealerships and buildings that were right on the highway. Wouldn't that make that property so much more valuable if it's right on the highway?
Yes.
Well, they moved the highway 30 feet over. It's no longer on the highway. What did that do to the value? That caused the value to go down, right?
Yes.
But why did they move the highway over? Does anybody know why they moved the highway over there? Where they made that, where the bridge goes over from Rawway to Woodbridge?
That way they build a bunch of high risers?
No. You see what they built on the left-hand side of the highway? Looks kind of like a factory over there. It's a beige building. It's not that bad looking, so a lot of people don't even notice it when you drive by it because it's not really that big of an eyesore. They moved the whole highway because of that building. It's an incinerator.
Oh, Lord.
So what you don't realize is they moved the highway over so that they could make exit ramps off the highway so that trucks containing municipal wastes and garbage will take it into that incinerator and they burn the garbage there. Wait a minute. You don't smell anything funny when you drive by there, do you? You don't. This is supposed to be one of these highly efficient, very modern incinerator plants that they have very low levels of waste that comes out of it. You really don't smell anything when it comes by because it goes through multiple burn processes that it completely burns everything up. It converts it to energy too. It generates energy for the city of Rawway. You know that after they built that, the taxes went down. That was originally supposed to be built in Linden, but because of politics, a lot of people were like, oh, we don't want an incinerator in our town. All the additional traffic of garbage trucks coming from all over and the stink in the air and more pollution. Look at you guys. You guys really never even bothered to notice this building, let alone smelling anything or additional traffic. The way that they rerouted the highway and everything, the trucks disappear off the highway. You don't even notice them. They go off to the side and they go underneath the highway and they go into the plant. People don't even notice it. Okay. Major mistake for Linden. Linden's taxes have been going up incredibly. In the meantime, Rawway's taxes went down and their town is getting better.
Yeah.
All right. Generating a lot of money from things like this. Okay. But people were worried about external obsolescence for that. Something that's not on the subject property that could affect their property values. It ended up not. It ended up actually bringing their taxes down too. Oopsie. So know the difference between functional obsolescence and external obsolescence. And the fact that depreciation is a loss of value due to any cause or condition. And as a general rule, land does not depreciate, so you can only depreciate the value of the improvement to the land. Short of contamination, right? Land doesn't depreciate. All right, now we're going to go over the income approach to value. It's based on the present worth of future rights to income on the property. It's used for valuing any property that generates income. Apartment buildings, office buildings, shopping centers, multifamilies, etc. Using cap rates or GRM, using cap rates or GRM. Okay. So what is a cap rate? We're gonna learn with cap rates first of all. So there's two commonly used methods. Now the book quotes out 3. There's another one called GIM. Okay, but I only say here using the following 2 methods, even though I posted 3 methods here. The third method is called a GIM, gross income multiplier. It's like a GRM, but it factors in additional income from real estate activities, like sales concessions and things like that. So let's go over one at a time. What is a cap rate? Cap rate is it's an abbreviation for capitalization rate. A capitalization rate or cap rate is a measurement that determines the rate of return on an investor's money, their investment. You're going to use the T formula to calculate it. Coming on it's not 27, it's slide 30. Okay, so on slide 30, we're going to learn about this. Okay, here, I'll give you a little preview. That's what this is, the cap rate T formula. Can you guess why they call it the T formula? It looks like a T, right? So there's certain numbers that you need to plug into that T formula, and here are those figures. You need to have these figures. So you got to have the GOI. GOI stands for gross operating income of the property. That's the income of the property before expenses. And then you need to calculate the GOE, the gross operating expenses of the property, not counting financing costs, which could vary from owner to owner. All right. And then you would use these two to figure out what the NOI is, the net. How do you figure out the net? You guys ever get a paycheck before in your lives? You wish you got paid the gross.
Right.
Instead you get the net, right? So what is the net? It's the gross minus expenses equals the net, right? So how NOI is calculated? GOI minus GOE equals NOI. There's the formula right there. And once you have that number, the NOI, then you could plug it into the T formula. So if we look at the T formula here, here's the numbers that you need to know. What numbers get plugged in where? Well, the NOI, the net operating income, all right, that's the small number. You see annual NOI? Annual income. Okay. You don't use the monthly NOI. You have to use the annual NOI when calculating cap rates. The large number here is the property value. Purchase price or property value. All right. So GOI, gross income, the gross monthly income times 12 months would equal the annual income, right? So you add up all the expenses, including vacancies, how much money you lost on vacancies. You don't use financing charges as an expense. That means the mortgage, because the mortgage payment can vary from one owner to the next and will vary from one owner to the next. You look, once you own the property, if you want to figure out what your true cap return on your investment is, you could add that in. But when trying to figure out the cap rates to show to somebody else who's a potential buyer, their cap rate would be different from yours. Their mortgage would be different from yours. So you don't want to add that in there. You want to keep it so the numbers are going to be the same for everybody. So you don't factor in the financing. So then you subtract the total gross operating expenses from the gross operating income, and you're left with the NOI. So that's the number you plug up top there. And then you need any two of these three figures to figure out the missing one, the missing component. So if you have the annual net operating income and you got the property value, you could figure out what the rate of return is. If you have the annual net operating income and you know what the rate of return is that you want to net, you could base your offer price on that. Or if you want to find out what the net annual income is, you could take the property value times the cap rate. It'll give you the net operating income. You see that? So if you have any two of these figures, you could figure out what the missing component is. So look, if you want to figure out what the cap rate on the property is, you plug in the net operating income up top. What's this symbol right here? This symbol.
Divide.
That's the division symbol, right? So you got to remember this here. TGIF, top number goes in the calculator first when you're plugging in your numbers. So this top number would go in the calculator, then you would hit divide, and then you would put in the lower number, the property value, and it'll give you what the cap rate is. If you want to figure out what the property value is, you got to put in the net operating income and the desired cap rate to get what the property value, the offer that you should make no more than, in order to get your desired cap rate. See how this little tool works, that T formula? They don't give this to you on exam. This is a tool I'm giving you. This is a tool I'm teaching you. This tool will help you value properties using cap rates. We're going to do math problems on it. The gross rent multiplier, let's back it up. Gross rent multiplier now is used to determine a value comparing two or more income generating properties using a multiplier. Two or more similar income generating properties using a multiplier. A multiplier is it's an insignificant number. There's no such thing as a good or a bad multiplier. It's just a number used to compare two things. In this case, it's going to be income producing properties. So don't ask me if there's a good multiplier or a bad multiplier. There's no such thing. A multiplier itself is an insignificant number. But here, when using these GRM, the gross rent multiplier, when using a multiplier, it has to use two similar income generating properties. You can't compare a 4-unit building to a 5-unit. They have to be 4-unit to compare a 4-unit, a 5-unit to compare a 5-unit. Okay, you gotta compare the same similar types of properties in that regard. Okay, you're going to use the reverse T formula to calculate it. That's also slide 30. Information needed to calculate any two of the following three items works the same way as that T formula worked, except the items that are needed are the gross monthly income, the value of the property, or the GRM itself. So let's skip to that slide again. See, the bottom of this slide shows you the gross rent multiplier. Here's the reverse T formula and the numbers that you need to know. You see the T formula, the small number goes up top. Over here on the gross rent multiplier, the small number goes down the bottom and the large number goes up top. The large number would be the property value. The small number would be the gross monthly income. You don't need to know the expenses to figure out the GRM. You only need to know the gross monthly income. All right. It's one thing to explain this to you. It's another thing when we actually do the math on it. So I just wanted to show this to you right now and give you a little explanation. We're going to finish this chapter going over the rest of the terms. And then we're going to come back and we're going to do the math of this chapter. Okay? Getting excited yet? Because I know how much you love math.
Are thrilled.
Awesome. All right. So, and lastly, the GIM, the gross income multiplier. You're not going to see this on exams. You'll probably just see it at the end of this chapter in the questions. The GIM, gross income multiplier, is basically the gross rent multiplier plus additional revenue from sales concessions not coming from the real estate. Okay. So if they're selling something, you're taking additional revenue from other resources into consideration. Additional revenue from other resources like sales concessions not coming from the real estate. All right. We don't need to know about all the details. That's about all you need to know about. Okay. So, moving along. Let's stop right here where we're at. Let's back up and let's do some highlighting. We already highlighted on page 277 the 3 approaches to value, and they were the sales comparison approach. What else? Sales comparison approach, cost approach, income approach, right? And on page 279 was the was an example of the CMA, the market analysis that we're doing with the 3 different comparable properties. You have to have at least 3 comparable properties when doing the valuation. Now, underneath, if you forget, remember I told you about how you got to know for exams, you need to know when to add and when to subtract from a comparables value. Right? The idea is to make sure that both of the properties are at the same level. If a comp is missing a feature the subject property has, what do? You're going to add or subtract to the comp's value.
Subtract.
That would put us down here. We're trying to make it at the same level. If the comparable property is missing a feature the subject property has, we add. If the comparable property has a feature the subject property is missing, then we subtract.
Yeah.
Okay? You never add or subtract from the subject property's value because you don't know the subject property's value. That's what we're trying to determine. You only add or subtract from the comparable property's value. Okay? Now, which approach to value, which of the 3 approaches to value would you use to price a shopping center?
Cost approach.
Shopping centers don't generate income? Don't have comparables?
No, I guess they might. So maybe income approach.
There you go. Which approach to value would you use to price a 1-family home?
Sales comparison.
Sales comparison approach. Which approach to value is used most often by realtors?
Comps.
Comparison.
Sales comparison approach. Which approach to value would you use to price a church?
Cost approach.
Cost approach. Which approach to value is also known as the appraisal by summation?
Is that the cost approach?
Cost approach. Which approach to value would you use to price a 4-family house?
That's a little tricky. I guess I would use the sales comparison, but couldn't you also use the income?
Why wouldn't you? Absolutely. I mean, there could be other 4-family homes in a neighborhood that have recently sold that you could compare it to, right? But they also generate income. So you could also use the income approach.
Yeah.
Why not use both? When you do, it's called reconciliation. See the next slide here? Reconciliation, here's another term to know. When you apply more than one of the 3 approaches to value to the same property, that's called reconciliation. So, which approach to value should we use? We would use both approaches to value to figure out which one would be the best to use. So which one would be the best to use? The one that would be the most profitable. Whether it's income or sales comparison. Whichever one would be the most profitable for the sale of that property, that's the one you use. Okay? Sales comparison approach, cost approach, or the income. All right?
Gosh.
Thank
Yes.
you. Thank you.
Victor, what are we highlighting in the book?
Now we're okay. So on page 279, highlight the cost approach, the title. And then highlight the cost approach is most helpful in the appraisal of special purpose building, such as schools, churches, and public buildings. Okay. And it goes on to tell you these properties are difficult to appraise because you can't use the other appraising methods because they don't have comps and don't generate income in the normal fashion. Just like that one slide I had told you about that. Now, the cost approach to value is based on substitution. Wait, what is substitution? Well, it says the cost approach is based on the principle of substitution, which states that the maximum value of a property tends to be set by the cost of acquiring an equally desirable and valuable substitute property. The cost approach is also referred to as the appraisal by summation. Highlight cost approach is also sometimes called the appraisal by summation. The cost approach consists of 5 steps. And then put a highlighted box around the 5 steps, which then continues to the next page. So the first 2, and then I'm going to write underneath that, continued on next page. And on the next page, I'm going to continue putting a highlighted box around the remaining 3 steps there. Now, the interesting part about this cost approach, they say the value of the actual land itself uses the sales comparison approach. That's just for the land. All right. Now, we're never going to do this in real life, but we're going to get a math problem on the cost approach. And I'm going to show you how to do it in this chapter here. Okay. On page 281, determining reproduction or replacement cost. If you guys were wondering, you know, I explained to you the 2 different approaches that an appraiser can use to determine how are they going to value the cost of, are they going to try to figure out the cost to rebuild a substitute property that would serve the same purpose, or are they going to try to build another building that's exactly the same? Right? So if it was a church that burned down, are we going to try to figure how much is that appraiser going to try to figure out how much it costs to build an exact duplicate with the same marble, stone, or whatever it was made out of, you know, or with all the intricate stuff in it? Or are they just going to see how much is it going to cost to build another warehouse type building where people can congregate to pray? You know, that's not necessarily so beautiful, right? Well, that would be something that the appraiser would have to take into consideration, and determining the reproduction or replacement cost is up here, but we don't need to know this for exams, so we'll skip it. You guys can read it on your own, though, for if you're curious, okay? We did study a slide about depreciation, so we're going to highlight depreciation refers to a loss in value due to any cause or any condition that adversely affects the value of an improvement to real property. And then underline, as a general rule, Land does not appreciate. Land does not depreciate. Now, they go on to say, except in rare cases when the land is misused, as misused farmland, downsized urban parcels, or improperly developed land. For appraisal purposes, as opposed to depreciation for tax purposes, depreciation is divided into 3 classes. And we already went over that. You have physical deterioration. That's when the building rots. Is it curable? So we're going to highlight physical deterioration. And then on the first bullet point, we're going to highlight curable. Then we're going to highlight functional obsolescence. That's a term you need to know. This refers to physical or design features that are no longer considered desirable by property buyers. Then we're going to highlight external obsolescence, also known as economic or locational obsolescence, is caused by factors not on the subject property. So this type of obsolescence is almost always incurable. Turn the page. On the income approach, we're going to highlight income or income capitalization approach is based on the present worth of the future rights to income. And they go down to 1, 2, 3, 4th bullet point down. All these bullet points tell you how to calculate it and do the math on it. But we're actually going to do some math problems on it. You guys, I don't know if you're going to get a math problem on cap rates, but I'm going to teach you how to do it anyway. Because you're going to need to know it when you're in the business. You're probably going to get a word question about cap rates. And highlight on the second line of that 4th bullet point, estimating the rate of return an investor demands for the investment of capital. Then go to the end of the line. Rate of return is called the capitalization or cap rate. So it's a measurement of the rate of return on an investor's money. If you want a simpler definition, the one that I have on the slideshow. They give you the formulas in a couple different ways here in the book as well, but I'm going to teach it to you by learning that T formula. It's a lot easier. Then go to the next page, 283, and we're going to highlight gross rent multiplier. Relates to the sales price of a property to its income. Gross monthly income used for residential property. Oh, wait, you know what? Don't highlight that. They tell you to use for residential property to use gross monthly income, for commercial property to use annual. Just stop it right there. Just highlight gross rent multiplier, GRM, relates to the sales price of property to its rental income. We're actually going to do a math problem on it. What I want you to do is I want you to write next to it, next to the title, gross rent or income multiplier, I want you to write use reverse T formula. Write the letter T and put quotes around it. Use the reverse T formula. And if you want to draw that T formula, here's the reverse T formula on the bottom of the page, okay? You draw that T. The top would be the property value. On one side, you would put the GRM. And the other side on the bottom, you'd put the gross monthly income. And basically, you divide down or multiply across to figure it out. You could also write that little acronym there, TGIF. Does not mean, thank God it's Friday. It means the top number goes in the calculator first. All right, go to page 282, go back one page here. And next to where we highlighted cap rates, capitalization rates in the margin or down below or wherever you want to write it on that page, the whole page is for cap rates. Right, use T formula. Use T formula to calculate. And then the T formula is up here on the top of this slide.
Where are we writing that in this section?
I'm writing it in the margin. I wrote it in the margin left to where we highlighted what a cap or capitalization rate is. But really, this whole page is about cap rates, so you could write it anywhere.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah, page 282. I'm sorry. Now, when calculating cap rates, the small number goes up top, but the small number is the annual NOI. Annual NOI. On one side, you're going to put the rate or cap rate. That's a percentage. Don't forget to put percentage. It's a cap rate or percentage. And the other side will be the large number, which is the property value. Now, cap rates, this T formula that you use to figure out cap rates could be used to figure out a lot of problems. It could be used to figure out your commission. And that's the first math problem I'm going to show you how to use it on. Wait, that's a problem. That's a problem. That's a problem. That's a problem. All right. Here's another math problem we're going to learn about: how to calculate depreciation, depreciation using the cost approach. What approach to value? This is the cost approach that uses appreciation, depreciation. And here's the steps for figuring out these math problems. We'll go over this shortly because we're almost done doing all the terminology in this chapter, and then we're going to do over all these math problems. All right. Yeah, let me just show you really quick, actually, cap rates. When determining the cap rate, it's measuring the rate of return on an investor's money. So there's a question here that says a property is listed for sale at $400,000 with a monthly rent with 3 units at $1,200 per month. The property taxes are valued at $8,500 a year. Insurance is $900. Water, sewers, $300. Electric is at $85 a month. Gas is $70 a month. Like, they got all these property expenses. So what do I do here? First of all, anytime they give me a monthly expense, I'm going to convert it to an annual expense right next to it. If they give me a quarterly expense, I'm going to convert that to like if they give the water sewer over here, it's $300 per quarter. I converted it to an annual. So basically I converted all these things that are, if they don't give me the annual expenses, I convert them all to annual. And then I add up all the annual expenses, except for, look at this one, mortgage payment. When calculating cap rates, you don't use the financing. So I add up all the property expenses. I put that here. I add up what the monthly income is. 3 units at $1,200 a month. What's that? $3,600 a month?
Yes.
Times 12. It should be $43,200 a year.
Correct.
So you take $43,200 minus all these expenses, which added up to $16,560. That gives you the net operating income of $26,640. Now we take that number and we plug it into the top of our T formula. And we know that the owner in the property for sale is listing the property at $400,000. So what's the cap rate on this property? Well, top number goes in the calculator first, TGIF, 26,640. You could try it in your calculators if you like. $26,640. You divide it by the value, $400,000, and it's 6.5%. If your calculator says 0.0666, well, how do you convert a whole number to a percentage? You move the decimal point 2 places to the right. That gives you 6.6%, right? So what is a cap?
You divide by what?
Okay, so you take this number up here, the 26, the net operating income, and you divide it by the value of the property, which is 400,000. You see the question? A property is listed for sale at 400,000. We only needed to figure out, we had to do some math to calculate what the NOI is, the net operating income. For that, we just calculate what the income is minus the expenses, and we're left with the net. We take the net divided by the value, and we get the cap. And if you want to check your math, this is the way you check it. Take the net operating income of $26,640 and divide it by 6.6%. You see, because you divide down or multiply across. 26,640 divided by 6.6, it should be $400,000. $26,640. Well, I didn't put the exact amount. If we did 26,640 divided by, what was it, 6.66%, that to be exact, then we would get the 400,000.
You have multiplied by 6.6.
Divide it.
That's
We're
the division.
26.
What's that? Right there.
You take
X.
the net operating income. No, I'm not doing this. We're trying to figure out the value. So if we're missing the value and we want to find out how much to purchase the property for, we take the net income, divide it by 6.6, actually 6.66%, and it would give you 400,000. Let's try it your way. If we don't know what the net operating income is, we could take $400,000 times 6.66%, and that should equal 26,640, does it?
Yes.
Isn't that T formula handy? Here, let me get you more used to how to work this T formula. Let's do a math problem with your commissions, because all of these math problems here are pertaining to your the real estate. Let me see. I have slide 31. Appreciation, straight line. Okay, here's one. Here's the math problem using the regular T formula, that same T formula, right? The small number goes up top, large number goes on one side, and a percentage or rate goes on the other. If you get a question like this on your school or state exam, where the hell is it? Here it is. It says, if you charge the seller 6% commission and the total commission collected was $21,600, how much did the property sell for? Well, we know that the percentage or rate goes down here, so we could write the 6% here. And the total commission collected, they're asking how much the property sold for. So is the commission, the amount 21.6, is that the small number or a large number in relation to the value of the property?
Small.
It's the small, so the small number goes up top. So we write it up here. $21,600 divided by 6% equals, how much did the property sell for?
360,000.
Stop, Zoe.
That's 360,000. That's correct. Let me show you that same math problem on how we could check our math. If this house sold for, if we're asking a question in a different way now, if the house sold for $360,000 and the total commission collected was $21,600, how much commission did the agent charge to sell their home, their house? We have to draw the T formula because this is the math problem. They're not going to give you any of this. They're not going to give you the T formula. That's something I'm teaching you.
Right.
Okay? So you just got to remember the small number goes up top, large number on one side, and percentage goes on the other. That's what you got to remember. And you draw that T formula, you draw that T on your scrap paper. So 21.6 divided by 360,000, 6%, right?
Yep.
Here, let's ask the same problem in another way. If the house sold for $360,000 and the agent charged 6% commission, how much would the total commission be?
21.6.
21.6.
36,000 times 6%.
That's right. You divide down, multiply across. That's the division symbol. You see the division symbols? And the X, that's multiplication. You multiply across or divide down. So if we have a missing number, in order to figure out what the missing number is, in this case, you would multiply across. In the previous problem, we're missing the number here. So we divide down. Top TGIF, top number goes in first to get the missing number. In the previous problem before that, we're just missing the number on the other side. You still divide down. You see how they could use it on your commission problem, which you probably get one of these on state exam, by the way.
For some reason, multiplying across the large times the right, I'm understanding. But I don't know why I can't get the small number on the top, like say, to get the property value.
Well, make sure you're typing the full number of $360,000.
No, the one where you did 21,600, right?
Mm-hmm.
Which one? This one?
Yeah, and then you, to get the property, how much it sold for, what did you do? You times or you divided? You
No,
divided.
you divide.
Divided.
You see this? This is the division symbol here. So you divide down to figure out the answer. If one of the answers are missing below, you divide down. And TGIF, top number goes in the calculator first, then you hit the division symbol, and then you put this figure in, and you'll get the missing component.
Oh, that's super easy. Okay.
That's very helpful.
Yeah, don't get confused that the 6% has a times a multiplication symbol, and then there's a blank spot. The way that you get that answer is you go from the top number down to get the number across to the left.
Correct. Wherever you have the two numbers, that's the only thing you're looking at. You're not looking at the missing component. Okay?
Okay, thank you so much.
You divide down.
You divide down and multiply across. We can't multiply across in this situation because we don't have the number on the other side. So we're going to divide down. So
I like that. That's very helpful.
you can remember that saying, divide down or multiply across, and TGIF, top number goes in first. Okay?
That's very helpful.
And you just got to remember the small number goes up top and the large number's on the bottom for the regular T formula. That's for calculating commissions, for calculating taxes, for calculating value of the property or cap rates. The only problem that you use the reverse T formula for is going to be for the gross rent multiplier. So here's another problem for oh, no, never mind that one yet. No, never mind that one. Okay, so we did this. Did that. Here's just another, I got to teach you the GRM first. Okay, here's the gross rent multiplier. In this case, you're going to use the reverse T formula. And the reverse T formula is the large number goes up top in this one, which would be the value of the property. The only math problem that you use the reverse T formula for is the GRM. And for some reason, they love to give GRM math problems to salespeople. So in this example, how much should I offer to get a 9%? Oh, wait, this is getting a little complicated. I'm showing you how to really use it in real life. Let's first figure out how to basically figure out the GRM before we start getting into advanced stuff. Okay, here we go. How to calculate the GRM. GRM is the large number. The value goes up top. The small number goes on the other side. But in this case, the small number is not the net operating income. It's the gross monthly income, not the net annual, but the gross monthly. So we don't need to know any of the expenses here. How they try to screw with you on state exam is they may give you the annual income on the property and then throw in some expenses. The expenses you don't need. It's extra information they give you. All you got to do now, in order to figure out the gross monthly, if they give you the annual expenses, what do you got to do?
Divided by 12.
You divide it by 12 to get the monthly. They just want to see if you really know what the hell you're doing, you know? And so in this problem says, if the value of a property is $400,000 and the gross monthly income is $3,600, what's the GRM? Well, the $400 goes up top. The gross monthly goes on one side. You divide down. Top number goes in the calculator first. 400,000 divided by 3,600. And the GRM is 111.11.
Perfect.
Wasn't that easy to figure out?
That's never a percentage, right?
No, it's not a percentage. It's a whole number.
That's what we have. Yeah,
The GRM is not a percentage. It's a whole number.
I see.
That's what I wrote here. GRM, not a percentage. Okay. Now this just used the same math problem that we used to figure out what we figured out the cap rate on this one, which was 6.66%, right? Now we're going to use that same one on this property to figure out what the GRM is. Because look, our investor that came to us, we got a guy that came to our office. He said that he wants to buy a property if it'll get him at least a 6% cap rate or 6.6% cap rate like this one. So let's figure out what the GRM would be on this property that we know gets us a 6.66% cap rate. It's the same exact math problem, but we're using a reverse T formula, and we figured out that it was 111.11. All we did is we put the value of the property and the gross monthly income there, and we figured that out. All right, great. We got a GRM of 111.11. Wasn't that easy to figure out?
So far.
That's all you need to know for state exam. Serious. That's all you need to know. And I told you the way how they're going to make it hard. They may give you the annual income instead of the monthly, and you got to remember to divide it by 12.
Victor, is this on your school test?
Not yet, but it will be. I'm going to be adding some math problems like that.
When? Next year?
No, I'm working on adding them soon. But you're probably not going to get them
Oh, okay.
right away. But I will be adding some in soon.
So
That means
your
the more-
your
that means
test
the
doesn't
longer
have
it takes you to
any
take the
problems?
test, the more likely that it might be on it.
I know.
I keep every day I'm adding more and more questions into the database. I started out by putting the exam online. It only had 110 questions on it. So everybody's getting the same 110 questions, just in different orders. Now I'm adding questions. You're getting a couple hundred questions there now that it could choose from. I keep adding and adding more questions to the database. So you could have two people sitting next to each other taking the same exam. You may not be getting the same questions. First of all, it's randomizing it. I set it to randomize them in a random order. And then it also is picking the questions from the database at random as well. Okay.
Yeah, but it helps no one to cheat, so.
Exactly. That's the whole purpose. All right. So how can we actually use a GRM now? We figured out this property that will get us a 111 GRM, 111.11 GRM. So what the hell is that? Is that a good GRM or bad GRM? It's an insignificant number. There's no such thing as a good GRM or bad GRM. We just know that for this 3-unit building in this neighborhood that gets you a 6.66% cap rate return on your investment has a GRM of 111.11. So what good is that going to do to us?
Sure, I need to ask you a question. I'm sorry.
Yes.
Can you were saying that something needs to be divided by 12. I missed that little part because I had to take it.
So you see over here, this is the income. This number down here is the gross monthly income.
Yes.
On state exam, they may not give you, in the math problem, they may not give you the monthly income. They may give you the annual income of 36 times 12, whatever that is, okay? And then, so in order to figure out the number to plug in here, you're not going to put the annual income. You're going to have to divide the annual income by 12 to get the monthly to plug it in here.
Okay.
And they may give you a bit of additional information that you don't need at all for this math problem. They may tell you what the monthly expenses are.
Okay.
You don't need to know expenses for the GRM. That's
Okay.
that's how they trick you, because a lot of times with people, when it comes to math, they start plugging in every number that they see in the math problem for all possibilities to see if it answers equals one of the multiple choice answers.
Okay. Thank you.
All right, so now how to practically really use this problem in real life. Let's see, property sales of 425. Okay, now this is just another GRM problem. I'm going to show you how to use that math problem in real life. All right, here it is. So, say another okay, that 3-unit building, let's just pretend this was a 2-unit building, okay? This is a 2-unit building, not a 3-unit. This was a 2-unit, okay? Because remember, we can only compare similar buildings. And so this other property comes up on the market for sale. And let's see, another 2-unit property comes on the market for sale. I don't know if you guys could read that, so I'll zoom in. And the investor will purchase it if he gets the same cap rate of that 6.66% or better. So the other properties that are on the market, though, that are 2 units, we don't know. They never posted in the MLS what the income or the expenses are on the property. Well, if it's in the same neighborhood, if it's a, let's see, if it's in the same neighborhood, do generally 2 bedrooms and 3 bedrooms go for around approximately the same rental in the same neighborhood? Approximately, give or take?
You would think so.
Yeah, give or take a little bit, maybe slight differences, but if they're same properties, basically, rentals for 2 bedrooms and 3 bedrooms in the same neighborhood are probably going to go for around the same price range. Is it accurate? No, we're just doing some guesstimating by doing this. All right, but we could guesstimate that if another property comes on the market for sale, here, I'm going to just do this in a, I'm just going to do this on the whiteboard. It'll be easier than showing you this one that's right here and just showing you what the problem is that is already figured out. As that whiteboard opens, all right, we figured out that the GRM is 111.11 on this property. And this other property comes on the market for sale. This is not giving a good example. We're gonna do a fresh example on the whiteboard because we're seeing 2 different properties that have different numbers. We're gonna do it from scratch, and I'm gonna show you how they compare. I'm going to show you how to practically use this problem in real life for the gross rent multiplier. Once it opens. Chugga chugga. Come on, Microsoft, you could do it. I think I got too many programs open. Come on.
That might be true.
Yeah. And I got a lot of RAM in this sucker too.
You managed to have all this energy. Oh my God, I'm exhausted.
I get exhausted after teaching. I just tried to give you guys an experience so that you guys don't get tired and bored. Trust me, I am burnt. But I could just keep pushing it a little bit more for you. You know, I don't want you guys being bored in the class here. I know. This class could be very boring. Listen, I took the class just like you guys have, but trust me, instructors out there are freaking boring. I've been through it, and I know that it's unpleasant. You're falling asleep in class. I'm trying not to keep my voice monotone because after a while, I mean, you could just start talking like this. After
You make it entertaining. No. It's boring, but you make it entertaining.
I tried to. I tried to. All right, so I'm just going to create a new slide here from scratch, okay? Let's zoom out a little bit. And let's do one of these, let's just do one of these problems really quick for a 4-unit building, okay? We got a 4-unit building that has two 2-bedroom units. They're renting at $1,200 a month each. And then we have 2 3-bedroom units at $1,500 a month each. All right. And let's just say that the total monthly expenses on the property, I'm not going to give you the breakdown, so we have to add everything up. Let's just say that the total monthly expenses on this property are for monthly. Let me go to that slide. Let me go to one of those slides and figure out what the monthly was on it. It's going to steal it from one of these other slides that I did. I'm not even going to write down the monthly. Let's just say the annual expenses are $16,560. So the annual expenses on this are $16,560. Okay, that's annual. Well, so we already got the annual figured out here, and the basis of this is we need to figure out what the NOI is. That's the net operating income. Then we figure out what the NOE is, the net operating expenses are. We subtract one from the other, and that gives us the, I'm sorry, NOI, NOE. What the hell is NOI, NOE? See, it is getting late for me too. GOI and the GOE would give you the NOI, all right, the net operating income. So we already know the annual expenses on this are $16,560. What are the annual income here? Well, let's see. Pull out my calculator. If we got 2 units at $1,500 a month each, that's $3,000, and that's $2,400. So 3,000 plus 2,400, that is $5,400 a month, right?
Yes.
Times 12 months. That gives us an annual income of $64,800. And so $64,800 minus the $16,560. That gives us an NOI of $48,240 for this property. So if we're trying to figure out what the cap rate is, what numbers do I plug in where? Oh, wait, by the way, this property is selling for $425,000. Okay. Now, what numbers do I plug in where?
So your net operating income goes up top.
48,240 goes up top.
What'd you say it was, 425 or 450? How much was it going for?
Right up
425.
425,000.
425 goes to the left, down to the left.
All right.
And you're gonna figure out what your cap rate is. So 48,240 divided by 425,000.
Right. Sorry, all these numbers are a little close together here. Here, let me separate them. So now what do we do? 48,240 divided by $425,000 That gives us,
A little over 11%.
wow, that's great. That's slumlord territory, almost. 11.35%. Wow, that is stellar. That's phenomenal. We don't see that. I should have put that expenses up there a lot. See, I made this a poor family. Whatever.
That's 425 divided by 48,240.
No. We put top, remember, TGIF. Top number goes in the calculator first.
Right.
TGIF. 48,240 divided by 425. Not 425,000 divided by 48,240. 48,240 divided by 425.
Okay.
And then that gives us our 11.35%. This is our cap rate, which is superb. That is high. That's an excellent return on your investment. In New Jersey, a lot of times if you see something like that, you're probably working in slumlord territory, right? Come on, where's my mouse? Damn it. Come on, mouse. Okay, here we go. So what am I going to do? I'm just going to move this a little bit. And we're going to draw another math problem because we have a separate property that came on the market for sale here. I just want to separate these two, but keep them close. So this is a new property that came on the market for sale. It is also a 4-unit building. However, this one has 1 2-bedroom and 3 3-bedrooms. We don't know what the expenses are. We don't even know what the income is. How much should we offer on this property to get us in that same cap rate range? Well, first off, the first thing that we're going to need to do is we're going to need to figure out for this property up top, let's figure out what the GRM is for it. I don't know why I can't see my mouse right now. All right, so let's figure out what the GRM is. I know it says ORM, but come on. Whatever. That's the GRM. Okay, it's supposed to be GRM. So let's do, we put in the reverse T formula here. What number goes up top? The large number, $425,000, right? That's the value. And then what's the gross monthly income on this property? $5,400.
We don't know.
No. For the problem that we did up here.
Oh, okay.
We're trying to figure out the GRM for this property so that we can figure out what we're going to offer on this one. So 425 divided by 5,400.
Oh, that's what we paid. Got you. 78.7.
That gives us a GRM of 78.70. 425,000 divided by 5,400 is 78.70. That's the GRM. Were you guys able to come up with that?
Yes.
Okay. That wasn't hard, was it? That's all you need to know for state exam. But how do you use it in real life? I'm going to show you how to practically use it. It could actually be a useful tool for you in real life. Say that you got an investor now that they want this same 11% cap rate, which is kind of ridiculous, but let's just say they want 11.35% cap rate on this property too. How much should we offer on this property? Well, I don't know. They didn't give us any expenses. They don't give us anything. Well, let's just say a 4-unit building in the same neighborhood. Should they have approximately the same expenses? Let's just go with that. Let's just say they're in the same neighborhood of 16,560. So what we're going to do is we're going to draw that reverse T formula again. And we're going to put in a GRM of 78.70, which we know that this property, also a 4-unit building, would get them that 11.35% cap rate. What is the gross monthly income in here? Well, we know that a 2-bedroom unit in the area will get you $1,200 a month, and we know that a $1,500 for each 3-bedroom. This one has 3 bedrooms, not 2. So we got 3 bedrooms at $1,500 a month. That equals
4,500.
1,500 times 3. That's 4,500 plus the 1,200 for the 2-unit. So we're adding these two, right? 4,500 plus the 1,200 gives us 5,700. We put that number here, 5,700, and we multiply across. 5,700 times 78.70.
448,590.
448,590. We don't offer any more than this. We should be in that same 11.35% cap rate range for this neighborhood. You see how that could be useful for us?
Mm-hmm.
Granted, it's not accurate. It's not meant to be, but it could save us a lot of time. Instead of, some people may be thinking, well, why don't you just call up the listing agent and find out what the income is and what the expenses are? Because they may not want, the owner may not want it disclosed unless you start signing non-disclosure agreements first. And this is just to find out if this is a property we even want to show to our investor. Why do you want to go through all that when you could just do some simple math to figure it out yourself to get you in the ballpark range, right? So instead of calling the listing agent up, trying to figure out what these numbers are, we could make them up ourselves. We could ballpark them to get us in that range. Can you guys see now how this could be a helpful tool?
Very helpful.
Yeah, it could save you some time. We don't need to be signing contracts with anybody, non-disclosure agreements, just to find out what the rents and expenses are to see if it's a property we even want to show. Instead, we could do a little fuzzy math, right? and see and figure it out ourselves.
Okay, so just so I can write this down. I don't know why I missed the definition. GOI and GOE, income and expensive.
Correct. That's it. Income and expenses. They just throw gross operating in front of it,
Oh, okay.
So it's basically income expenses equals the net, but they say gross operating income, gross operating expenses. That's how they work in the financial world. Okay. We good? All right. Let's do another math problem here. This one is yet a little bit harder. You know what? Here, I'm just going to clear off this board.
Victor,
Yes, sir.
I just want to make sure, listen, right now I'm not working, so I'm good. I just want to make sure I know other people have other stuff to do that we can finish this chapter if you're up for it.
I do.
Oh, no, yeah. No, I want to finish this chapter. We got one more math problem to do. A little terminology. Yeah, I know we got 5 minutes left here. So, yeah, let's stay a little bit later like we did yesterday. Get through it. It's not going to be that much later.
Okay, cool.
All right. Everybody cool with that?
I am.
Yes, thank you.
All right. It's not going to be that much later. All right. I'm going to get you out of here as soon as possible, but not rushing you. Here's another math problem that they give you on state exam, not on ours. It's a depreciation problem. Let's first go back to the slideshow. It's around here somewhere. There we go. Calculating depreciation. This is a part of the cost approach, which I told you we'll never do in real life other than the exam. So in determining the value of a special purpose building like a church, to reconstruct that church that burned down, how is the appraiser going to determine the value of it? Well, first they have to determine which method they're going to use, a straight line or compound method when calculating depreciation. Here, this is the way that your problem is going to work. I'm going to go back and forth between this slideshow here. First of all, they got to determine, are they using a straight line method or compounding method? Compounding method is more accurate, but it requires repeating step number 3 here, 1 time for every year. Step number 2 of this problem is, are you trying to determine a depreciated or appreciated value? What is appreciation? An increase of value. Depreciation is a loss of value. Now remember, the word value means 100%. So we're always trying to determine 100%. So the math problem is always going to begin with 100%. Now, if depreciating, you're going to subtract from 100%. If appreciating, you add to 100%. And then we're going to go to step number 3. Are you trying to figure out how much the property was worth in the past, or are you trying to determine a current or future value? To determine a value in the past, you divide. To determine a current or future value, you multiply. So this is the formula for figuring out the math problem. I could go back to it if we need to. I will switch back and forth, it's fine. Let me first give you what the math problem is. Let me type a math problem here for you, okay?
Question.
Yes.
Cap rate is always the percentage, right?
Yes, cap rate is a percentage. It's a rate of return on the investor's money.
But the answer would always be a percent.
Correct.
Okay.
So let's add somewhere here. Come on. I don't know why there we go, type here. Okay, so the math problem is going to say, I got all kinds of crap popping up on my screen. I'm sorry, guys. Type here. Okay, so the question would be worded like this. If you purchased a property for blank, okay, three years ago, and the property depreciated 2% per year. Using the compound method, if today's value is $250,000, how much did you buy it for? So if you purchased a property 3 years ago, and the property depreciated 2% per year using the compound method, if today's value is $250,000, how much did you buy it for? I'm going to show you how to figure this out, and then we're going to do one where you're going to figure it out. So this is the way that you do this problem. When trying to determine value, I said you always start with 100%. You're always trying to, oh, that's a little bit too thick, that pen. You're always trying to deal with 100% of it. Now, did this property appreciate or depreciate? Are we adding or subtracting from 100%?
Subtract.
We're subtracting because it depreciated in value, right?
Yeah.
So we're subtracting how much? 2%.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, 2% per year.
That gives us 0.98. Why did I subtract 2% and not go 2 times 3 is 6 and subtract 6%? Because we're using the compound method here. And let me go back to the other slide. When, let me see. When using the compound method, it's more accurate, but requires repeating step number 3 once for each year. So we're going to have to figure out this percentage, and we're going to have to do this problem once for every year, which we didn't get to that point yet. So now we got that first part down. So how many years ago did we buy it? 3?
Yes.
So we're going to have 3 steps to this problem. 1, 2, and 3. We're going to have to do 3 math problems, 1 for each year. We know today's value is $250,000. Are we trying to determine a value, a current or future value, or a past value?
Future.
Current.
Today's value is $250,000. How much did you buy it for? We're trying to determine a value in the past.
Okay.
If determining a value in the past, we divide. If trying to determine the current value, we would multiply. So divide by 0.98. And we're going to do this once for each year. $250,000 divided by 98% or 0.98 equals 200 and... Is that me or you guys?
Not me.
Huh. Probably that funky website. Hold on. I just closed it. Okay, so $250,000 divided by 0.98. 1 year ago, it was worth $255,102 and change. Are we going in the right direction? Yes, because the value is going up. Because we purchased the property and it depreciated. So we know today's value is less than what we bought it for. So we know that the math problem is going in the right direction. So we're doing the right thing. Because if you screwed up and you multiplied, the value would actually be going down here. All right. So now what we do is now we take this $255,102, and then we're going to divide it again by 0.98.
So you have to do that for 3 years, right?
Once for every year. That gives us $260,000, $260,308. So now we take that 260, 308, divide it by 0.98 again. And that gives us 265, 620. And that's our answer.
But it says today its value is 250.
Yeah, we were trying to figure out what the value was in the past. That's what we started with. 250 divided by 0.98. That told us how much it was worth 1 year ago.
Right.
Now we take that 255. Now we take this figure and we divide it by 0.98 again. It gives us 260,308. That's what it was worth 2 years ago. Now we take this figure, 260,308 divided by 0.98 again, and it gives us 265,620. This is how much we bought the property for.
Mm-hmm.
That is using the compound method. Now, if we use the straight line method to figure this out, basically, if they don't tell you to use the compound method, you're going to use the straight line method, whether they tell you to or not. Okay, so if they don't specify to use the compound, you can use straight line. So what is the straight line method? So first of all, we know that this is the compound. This is using the compound method. Okay, this whole formula here, this is the compound. Okay, now to use straight line, to use a straight line method, here it is, a straight line. Straight line method. Everything still begins at 100% when we're dealing with the value. But this time, we know it was 2% per year times 3 years. So it's 2% times 3 years. That's 6. That's 0.94. And we know today's value is $250,000. Are we trying to determine the value in the past or the future? Still the past. So we divide by 0.94. $250,000 divided by 94% or 0.94. And that gives us 265,957.
So the compound method, the straight method gives you a little bit more value?
No, I don't want to say that. Compound method is more accurate.
Okay.
Look, your money in your bank account. Do you want them to straight line it, or do you want them to compound it? Your money, when it's increasing in value, do you want your interest to compound over the years?
Yeah.
Yeah, you want it to compound. See, this is just for determining what the value was. Okay, this is what it was.
It was.
This was this was a loss in value. This is what we're determining what you purchased it for. Now, obviously, these numbers are different. So the answer is going to depend on the method that they told you to use, whether it was the compound or straight line method. If they don't tell you what method to use, you're going to use this method, the straight line. Let me give you another one of those that you figure out on your own. Here, I'm going to put the problem right beneath this other one, okay? And I'm going to even keep pretty much the same question here. I'm just going to change the numbers. This was a $300,000 property, okay? So if you purchased the property 3 years ago and the property depreciated 2% per year using the compound method, how much did you buy it for? What's step one? Everything begins with 100%. You're trying to determine value. Value, what is value? It's 100%, right?
Subtract 2%?
Well, let's see. What did the question say? What did it do? Appreciate or depreciate?
Probably depreciate.
And so what is depreciation?
Less.
It's a loss of value, right? So you're going to subtract from 100%. Correct.
So 100% is 300,000.
Now, how much are you going to subtract from 100% though?
2%.
Well, this is saying to use the compound method. What is the compound method? It means you're going to have to do the problem once for every year.
So you gotta subtract by 2. 100 minus 2.
So if that's the case, then you subtract by 2, 0.98. All right. Let me see. Somebody got the answer. Of course, David. He's good with the math stuff, right? Let's see.
Yeah, and then since he's struggling, yeah, right.
Let me tell you if I got it here. So let's see. 300. That's correct, Dave. All right. So let's work out this problem here on the board. $300,000. It's today's value, right? So we start off by writing it here. $300,000. Now, are we going to multiply or divide?
Divide, because it's depreciation.
No, wrong reason. Divide because we're trying to figure out a number in the past. Here's the thing to remember. You divide to figure out a past value. You multiply when you want to figure out a current or future value. So we're going to divide by 0.98 3 times. So 1 year ago, it was 306,122. Take that number, divided by 0.98. So 2 years ago, it was 312,369. Take that number, divided by 0.98. $318,744. That's the correct number. By the way, guys, how did I do that so quickly? If you put 300,000 divided by 0.98 and you hit the equal sign again. You'll get to next year, hit the equal sign again. You don't got to keep retyping in all the new numbers. Unless you got an older calculator. If you're using your cell phone, well, your cell phone should be able to handle it. Some calculators, if it's a simple calculator, sometimes they're not able to do that. So if that's the case, then you got to type in the new number and then hit divide again by that number, by 0.98 again, and it takes a little while. Everybody good with that? Everybody get that?
Yes, got it.
Yes.
All right, here, I'm going to change this problem up a little bit. I'm going to change this problem up a little bit here. First, let me change this so that the ink does not go to shape right away, because that's kind of annoying. Keep the active pen. Okay, anyway. All right, I'm going to change this problem. If you purchased a property for $300,000 3 years ago and the property depreciated 2% per year using the compound method, what is today's value? What's the first step?
100%.
When determining value, we're always trying to determine 100% of it, right? Let me go to the blank ink. So, are we adding or subtracting? What determines if we add or subtract?
Whether it's
Depreciating or
Appreciation or depreciation. So nothing changed. It's depreciating. So depreciation is a loss of value. So we're subtracting. How much? Well, it's still the compound method, so it's still going to be 2%. 0.98. Now, I said to use the compound method, so we know it's going to be 1, 2, 3 years, right? So if today's value is $300,000, what do? What's the next step?
divide by 0.98. I mean, yes.
All right. Are we trying to determine a value in the past or a current or future value?
Oh, no, you multiply?
Yeah, future value, today's value.
Multiply by 9.
So that's what's going to determine whether we're going to divide or multiply. Now, we're not trying to determine the value in the past. I'm giving you the value in the past. So this time we're going to be using multiplication. So we're going to multiply by 0.98. $300,000 times 98%. That's $294,000. Take that number, multiply it by 0.98 again. That gives us 288,120. Wait a minute. Are we doing this right? The numbers are going down.
Yeah.
Yes, because it's appreciated.
Well, it's depreciating. Right?
Oh, okay. Because we know the value in the past and we're trying to figure out the current value and we know that it depreciates. So the value should be going down. So we know that we're doing things right. That's a way to check to make sure you're doing things right, that we've selected the right option here. Right? So we take that number again and we multiply it again by 0.98. This phone locks too quick. Oh, damn it. I screwed up. 300
Okay.
3 times 98%. 1, 2, 3. So 3 years ago, it was at 282, 357.
we're not rounding.
And 60 cents. So it's $282,357. Okay, you'll round the cents. Actually, you don't have to round the cents. Well, if it's not if there's no answer option that's 282,357, you would select 282,358 if we're rounding because it was 6, so you round it up, right? You'll see you'll know whether you should be doing the rounding or what have you by whatever answers option they have. We'll go with 358. We'll round up. Okay.
So the current value is 282?
282, 358. Yep. If we round it up. That's the answer. This is probably one of the harder math problems you get. Because there's the steps of, do I multiply? Do I divide? Am I subtracting or adding? Or how do we start the problem? Remember, when determining value, you always, what is value? 100%. We're always dealing with 100% of it.
Right. So to find the past value, you divide. To find the current value, you multiply.
Correct. So here, let's go back to that slide. In this slide, I showed you the detailed instructions here. So step number 2, if depreciating, decrease in value, subtract % of depreciation from 100%. If appreciating, you add to 100%. Step number 3, are you trying to figure out how much the property was worth in the past or current or future value? Determining past values, you divide. Determining future values, you multiply.
Perfect.
Okay. All right. So we're done with the math and that. Back to the book. On page 284, reconciliation. We're going to highlight. Wait, what are we going to highlight here? We're going to highlight the title, reconciliation, and then we're going to highlight if more than one of the three approaches to value are applied to the same property. That's it. That's a definition of reconciliation. That you need to know. All right. Appraising. Why do we get appraisals done? Well, first of all, a CMA must never be called an appraisal. We must never offer free appraisals. We could offer free CMAs, right? Because appraisals are conducted by skilled licensed professionals called appraisers. Situations requiring appraisal. Following along in the book, this is on page 285. Here's what we see on the slideshow. For estate purposes, when somebody dies. For divorce proceedings, right? When somebody dies, to determine what the value of the estate is, because if you're going to split it up between the heirs and sell everything, right, we need to know what the value of the property is, right? For divorce proceedings, when people split up, okay, if each person wants their share of it, well, we need to know what the value of the property is, or maybe one of the spouses want to keep the property. Well, they're going to have to pay off the other spouse, so we need to find out what the value of the property is. We need to get an appraisal. For financing reasons, when purchasing or refinancing property. We need to get an appraisal. For taxation purposes, they use the assessed value. However, assessed value is based on the actual value called ad valorem, right? For relocation purposes, when using corporate relocation companies, sometimes they purchase the property. They want to know what the value of it is because they don't know your area, so they need to get an appraisal. Condemnation. What is condemnation? It's the court process of taking the property using the government's power of eminent domain. But they have to justly compensate you. How can they justly compensate you? Well, they need to get an appraisal on the property to find out what it's worth. For insurance reasons, for paying out when your house burned down, right? Damage loss for tax deductions. Damages or loss for tax deduction reasons. We're going to do a math problem on that in the next chapter. And for feasibility studies as well. Okay, so there's a lot of reasons why somebody would get an appraisal. All right. Turn the page. On page 287, this is a sample appraisal report. Kind of looks like our CMA, doesn't it? At least the top part of it kind of resembles the CMA, page 287. Right? This is called the Uniform Residential Appraisal Report. It's a standard report. It's got a code number somewhere on the bottom of it. It's kind of small here. Let me put my glasses on so I can read it. For Fannie Mae, it's Form 1004. Freddie Mac, Form 70. All right, there's a lot of information on this tiny form here. But look, it's got the subject property. It's got all the features. The subject property, comparable sales for at least 3 comparable properties, and then they have to make adjustments. When do you adjust the value of a comp? If it has a feature or it's missing a feature that the subject property does not have, right? If the subject property does not have a feature that the comparable does, Are you adding or subtracting from the comparables property? If the subject property has a feature that the comparable property, wait, I think I worded that opposite. Here, so we don't lose track. If the subject property has a feature that the comparable property does not, are we adding or subtracting from the comparable property's value
Adding.
to bring it up to the same level? And if it has a feature that the subject property is missing,
Subtract.
doesn't that make it a lot easier, this little thing? Okay. Now, you're not going to have these when taking the exam, but you could do the same thing with your hands, right? It's easy to figure out when you add or subtract. All right. Turn the page. The profession of appraising. Who wants to be an appraiser, possibly? Not a lot of math likers. Yeah, you got a lot of math here. All right. Now, legislation made a lot of changes. When I say legislation, I mean politicians made a lot of changes. You know, with the advent of the mortgage market crash, the mortgage meltdown of 2006, late 2006, early 2007, we had the mortgage meltdown. A lot of reactions happened. You know, politicians always want to seem like they're the heroes. They got the answers to everything and they could cure all ills, right? So we have politicians are very arrogant people. They come about and they say, we got the answers to everything. To make sure that this never happens again, I'm going to play the hero. I'm just not going to use those words, but I'll step in and I'll act like it so that I'll make sure that you know that I'm the hero. So when it comes re-election time, you know, I'm the one that proposed this legislation to cure these made-up problems, right? So they put all kinds of legislation in place against mortgage companies, saying, "Oh, it's the mortgage company's fault that the property values went up like crazy." Is it? Was it? Why did we have the mortgage meltdown?
Because lenders were lending to people who, and charging them exorbitant APRs.
Wait a minute. Hold on a second.
That's when the economy tanked.
Doesn't lending, hold on a second, but isn't lending highly regulated by the government? Shouldn't the government regulators stepped in if banks were doing something wrong?
Yeah.
They did.
You know what happened? Government actually allowed banks to do this. Not only did they allow them and enable banks to do to do things that they normally would not do, that opened up the floodgates that allowed property values to tremendously rise. They forced them to. The politicians were at blame. Look, I think it was 2004, there was a politician that was the head of the Commission for Oversight of the Lending Institutions. The guy's name, he's retired now, Barney Frank.
Oh, yeah.
Remembers that name?
Yep.
Yeah.
Barney Frank, actually, you could see on C-SPAN hearings, you know, those publicly recorded hearings. You could take some of the old video clips and match them up to the ones after the fact, after the mortgage meltdown. He denied everything. It's funny, you put the side-by-side clips. He basically told regulators, he told the regulators of the banks, which were under his supervision, they were supposed to be regulating the banks. He came out with some rhetoric. He said, listen, we don't have enough poor people or minorities that are owning homes. That's probably because the banks are not lending to them. And so he's questioning his own regulators on this. And his regulators are like, well, we don't look at any of those factors. We only look at the numbers, the person's credit scores. The banks, we're making sure that the banks are looking at only the credit scores. The banks are looking at their debt to income ratios. We look at the numbers to make sure that the people aren't going to default on the loans. So we only make sure that the banks don't lend more money than the properties are worth and more money beyond their means, because that could create some serious issues. His answer, I don't care about all any of that. They're discriminating. If you're not giving loans, more loans to minority persons and poor people, then they're discriminating. So if they don't start giving more loans to minorities and poor people, then we're actually going to go after them and start fining them. We may even yank their licenses to operate in banking. So the banks now were like, all right, so let me get this straight. We've always operated under the assumption that we got to look at the numbers. And if the person can't afford something, we don't give them more money than what they could afford to pay.
Which would be smart.
Which would be smart, and which is what they always did. So he's saying, so you're telling me that we got to actually make loans available to people who would not normally qualify based on the numbers? Because we need to get more loans from poor people and minorities? He said, yes. They're like, okay.
That's a good impression of him, by the way.
Thus, this opened up the market for something known as predatory lending. Because now you're targeting poor people and minority with these loans that you know are going to default. You're basically waving a steak in front of a hungry man's face, right? You're saying, you want to get into home ownership? We got a loan for you, right? Poor credit, no income, no assets, no problem. They came out with loan programs that said you could state how much money you make and what your income is, and we will not even verify it. It's called stated income, stated assets. Do you believe that that was actually a real thing? It actually still is. It's making a comeback again. Okay? Stated income, stated assets. Okay? But normally they still verified the person and they tried to figure out, if a bus driver says that he's making $400,000 a year, we know something's not right there, But so there's a little common sense they got to play into that role. But still, you had now people that were getting targeted for loans. Wait a minute. Let's see a way. Oh, you need more money in order to buy a house? How about this? Let me see. We already got you maxed out over here.
No money down.
Even with the new lending, how about we come up with some different loan programs for you? You know what? An adjustable rate mortgage will get you in at an even lower interest rate so that you could borrow more money because it's a lower interest rate. You just got to make sure that as property values go up and it increases in value, that you, at some point, you're going to want to refinance into a fixed rate loan, because if interest rates start creeping up, you're not going to be able to make the payments. Okay. But they may or may not have told you all that. Okay. So who really caused these problems? The politicians who later on step in to play the heroes, because it's that very same guy, Barney Frank, who stepped in later on and said, after the mortgage meltdown, he said, we need stricter regulations to oversee the banks. It's like, wait a minute, dude, you're the one that's in charge of the banks. You're the one that told them not to. He said, I never said such a thing. And some news agencies put by the side-by-side clips of him when he said it and now what he says now. And it's funny as hell. You guys can look it up online. There's a movie that could teach you all about this. It's, what was that movie called? Anybody know off the top of their hands? Top of the heads? Hold on, I got it written down here.
Not Wolf of Wall Street.
No, not The Wolf of Wall Street. It was actually called, wait, I have it in the mortgage chapter. Hold on. I never told you about it. The Big Short. The Big Short.
Never heard of it.
It's called The Big Short. Look it up. It has a lot of stars in it. Will Farrell. Not Will. Is it Will Farrell? No, not Will Farrell. The other guy. The other character. It's got a lot of famous stars in there. But they actually do a pretty good job of explaining what happened in an entertaining way. It's called The Big Short. So The Big Short, here we go. That's not it. The Big Short. Big Short. Doomsday Machine. No, that's wrong movie.
Look at the Big Short film right there. Wikipedia,
Wikipedia. Where's Wikipedia? Oh,
right there. Is that what you're looking at? It's based on the.
yeah, that's it. This is The Big Short right here. You see, here's all these, all the stars that were in this movie. Christian Bale, Steve Carell, Ryan Gosling, Brad Pitt. A lot of stars heading up that movie. They did a pretty good job explaining what happened, even though they kind of oversimplified it a bit and they didn't really get too deep into the beginning part as far as the politics goes, because, you know, Hollywood doesn't want to get into politics that, you know, may reflect bad on their politics. So, but the movie does a basically good job of explaining what happened in an entertaining way. I want you guys to watch this movie when you get a chance. You'll see it for free on Amazon, maybe Netflix and such. You could find this movie, The Big Short. Okay? It's an older movie already. It was, what, 2015 that it came out. All right? Not a bad movie to get. Tells you what happened with the mortgage meltdown. It's got some entertaining, funny parts. It's not just dry, you know. There's a... Look at the stripper scene. It's funny. Not obscene, but it's funny. Okay. Now, let's see. So what do we need to know? We're almost done with this chapter. Appraisal licenses. On page 288, MAI somewhere here. Never mind. Go back to page 285. That's where it is. On the bottom of page 285. The next to last bullet point on page 285. I want you to highlight Uniform Standards of Professional Appraisal Practice, USPAP, USPAP. All right, and then on page 288, under the profession of appraising, somewhere in here, there's something called MAI. You guys can help me find it. MAI means Member of the Appraisal Institute.
Third paragraph.
Okay, third paragraph, we're going to highlight, there we go, it's at the end of the line. Thank you. MAI, Member of the Appraisal Institute. Okay, just highlight those things. So, what does USPAP and MAI mean? Well, okay, not a problem, Jessica. Don't worry about the poll.
Yeah, I actually have to, I gotta get going to work. I
That's all
work.
right. That's all right. We're going to be done in 2 seconds here. I'm just explaining MAI, USPAP, and then we're doing key terms.
Key terms,
Okay.
so I'm like, hold.
Not a problem. All right. So MAI means, so an appraiser, we need to know these because these will be on state exam. MAI and USPAP. What is MAI and USPAP? Well, let me explain it in regards of real estate. When you guys get your real estate licenses, you guys are going to become members of the Realtors Association, right?
Mm-hmm.
What the Realtors Association is to us, NAR, National Association of Realtors, appraisers become members of MAI, members of the Appraisal Institute. Okay? Now, when you become a licensed real estate, once you get your membership in the Realtors Association, you guys need to take a Realtors Code of Ethics training class, right?
Mm-hmm.
Appraisers need to take USPAP, the Uniform Standard of Professional Appraisal Practice. So what the Realtor Code of Ethics is to us, USPAP is to them, and what NAR is to us, MAI is to them. Understand?
Yeah.
Okay. I can launch this poll for you guys if you want, even though everybody's leaving. That doesn't matter. I'll launch it anyway, but it doesn't really matter. All right. So you guys will get one, the other, or both of these on state exam. My understanding is as long as you know they have something to do with appraisers, you'll get the question right. But I just want to make sure that you guys have an understanding. It's not that hard to know. MAI, remember the Appraisal Institute. It's like our NAR. USPAP is like our Realtors Code of Ethics. Okay?
Got it.
Now, you guys want to know what it takes to become an appraiser? It's spread throughout this book here and throughout this page. I'm just going to have you highlight one thing on the page, though. All the way down in the last paragraph, we're going to highlight certified general appraiser. And then at the very last line, at the end of the line, we're going to highlight, unlike residential appraisers, certified general appraisers have no monetary cap on the properties that they can appraise.
Okay.
Now, I want you to add to the end of that line now, and can appraise commercial properties. And can appraise commercial properties all right. So if you look at this slide is probably just better to study from. It has the MAI, the USPAP on there, and it shows the 4 types of appraisal licenses, which here's the website link in order to get more info about it. And I'm sure it's here somewhere on this page. In order to become an appraiser, you first got to become an apprentice trainee and take a 90-hour class in appraisal study. I'm reminding you that you guys are here taking a 75-hour class in various real estate topics. You got to take a 90-hour course in just the stuff we're studying in this chapter. A lot of math too. And pass a state exam just to become an apprentice trainee who cannot work on their own. You got to work under supervision of a licensed residential appraiser, a certified residential appraiser, or a certified general appraiser. Now, how long do you have to work as an apprentice trainee? Well, a licensed residential appraiser, to become a licensed residential appraiser, you have to have an additional 150 hours of class and pass another exam of 2,000 hours experience over a period of not less than 12 months to become a licensed certified appraiser. Now, to become a licensed residential appraiser. Now, a licensed residential appraiser still cannot work on their own. They have to work under one of the certified residential or certified general appraisers. Okay. Now, and they can only do appraisals on residential property unless they're under the supervision of a certified general appraiser. Now, to become a certified residential appraiser who can work on their own, they have to have, they can only appraise properties, residential properties under $1 million. And they can appraise commercial property, but only if they're under the supervision of a certified general appraiser as well. Now, in order to become a certified residential appraiser, the applicant for certification as a residential appraiser must have an associate's degree or higher. This is the third from last paragraph under the profession of appraising on page 288. The applicant for certification as a residential appraiser must have an associate's degree or higher. Applicants without a degree can substitute at least 21 semester credits in English, economics, math, business, or law courses. And the student must also complete 200 additional hours of appraisal courses in a period of, and have at least 2,500 hours of experience in a period of not less than 2 years, 24 months.
Jeez.
Now, if you want to become a certified general appraiser, in order to become a certified general appraiser, the student must have a bachelor's degree. Wait. A degree in what? Well, you know what? Doesn't say. This is the new politician rule that they put in. With the advent of all the mortgage meltdown, the politicians put in these college requirements. Previously, to become an appraiser, you didn't need a college degree. You just needed to be able to take the classes and pass the exams and do the apprenticeships, you know. But now they put in, you could have a liberal arts degree. It doesn't matter. You know, I don't know how that's going to make you a better appraiser, but whatever. So, an applicant without a degree can substitute 30 semester credits hours in courses mentioned above previously, and 2 elective courses in accounting, geography, AG economics, business management, or real estate. In addition, another 300 hours of approved appraisal courses are required, and an apprenticeship of 3,000 hours of experience over a period of 2.5 years or more, with at least half of that, 1,500, has to be in non-residential properties. We adding up the years here, and the college, and
Independent contractors?
all the schooling and stuff. Well, they could, a certified general appraiser can be self-employed, but often a lot of these appraisers, they work for other companies. Wait, where do appraisers get their business from? Why do they get appraisals done? Right? Remember we went over that? You get appraisals done for various reasons. All right. Well, here we go. State purposes, divorce, okay, all this. So a lot of times appraisers need to have a book of business. They need to have connections somewhere, whether it's with the taxing body in a municipality or with attorneys for divorces or the court systems or what have you. They need to have connections somehow. And if they're not building up their own connections, they're going to need to be affiliated to someone and working under someone. So is it possible that they could work on their own? Yes, but they often work under someone else. And how much is your average appraisal cost on a home?
$400, $500.
Yeah, it's between $400 to $600, right? Probably on the lower end of that. So they're doing that, and then they got to split that with the company they're working with. I'm not sure how the splits work, but there you go. So appraisers are hustling. That's why if you ever see an appraiser, they come in, they're snapping pictures, they got their notes they're taking, they're running from room to room, and you're trying to follow them around having small talk, and they're just like, seems like they're ignoring you. That's because they're trying to collect all their data so they can move on to the next house and collect more data and snap more pictures. And then they still got to go home or to their office and do the research and put together the reports, right? If they do a lot of appraisals, they could make some decent buck, but otherwise they got to hustle to make the money. Right? Adding in a couple of college degrees, it may not be worth it for people to become appraisers these days. So this is why we're seeing an experience in slowdowns.
Excuse me.
Yep.
I'm going to leave. Thank
All right.
you very much.
We're
You're great.
All right, that's all right. We're done anyway. We're done anyway. Talking too much anyhow. Let's kill this out and let's do our key terms to review, and then we're done. All right.
Victor,
Yes, sir.
you want to do key terms tomorrow morning for this chapter? So, I mean, we usually have about 12 people in the class. Right now there's 6, and I guess that includes you.
Yeah, we could do that. That's fine.
And that way we can just go over it real quick.